Story 1. Brother kicked me out over sister-in-law's lies. Now they're homeless and want to move into my house. Alright, I guess I need to get this off my chest. A few years ago, I was really struggling. I had just finished college, had a not-so-great job, and honestly, life wasn't looking too good for me. My older brother, Tom, who's 9 years older than me, offered me a place to stay with him and his wife, Karen. At the time, I was super grateful. I mean, who wouldn't be? Rent was ridiculously high, and I wasn't making enough to even consider living on my own. Tom had this nice house with a spare room, and he told me I could stay there as long as I needed until I got back on my feet. It felt like a lifeline. So I moved in with them. It wasn't a permanent solution, but I was trying to get myself together, you know? I didn't want to be a burden or anything, so I made sure I helped out around the house as much as possible. I did the cooking, cleaning, ran errands, all that stuff. I wasn't contributing much financially at first because I could barely afford my own groceries, but I pitched in whenever I could. Like if I had some extra cash, I'd buy groceries for the house or take care of the little things they needed. I thought it was going pretty well. At first, everything seemed fine. Karen was nice enough, and Tom and I have always been close, so it felt like I was in a safe place. Karen and I weren't best friends or anything, but I didn't think there was any problem between us. She never really said much, just kind of kept to herself, but I didn't take it personally. She was pregnant at the time, so I figured she just had her own stuff going on, but after about 6 months, things started getting weird. Like, subtle stuff at first. Karen would make these little comments like, "Oh, when the baby comes, we're going to need a lot more space." Or, "I wonder if we should start thinking about how to turn the guest room into a nursery." You know, hints like that. I kind of got the vibe that she wanted me gone, but Tom kept reassuring me, saying, "Don't worry about it. You can stay as long as you need." I believed him because, well, he's my brother. Why would I think otherwise, right? Then the comments got less subtle. Karen started complaining more openly, saying things like, "It's going to be really hard having a newborn and a third person in the house." I wasn't trying to overstay my welcome, but at the same time, I didn't have anywhere else to go just yet. I had finally gotten a decent job by this point, but it wasn't like I had enough saved up to just pack my bags and leave right away. One day things really started to shift. I remember it clear as day. Karen was sitting in the living room, and I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner. Tom wasn't home yet, and Karen just starts talking to me out of nowhere. She tells me that she's uncomfortable with me living there, that it's affecting her peace of mind, and how she doesn't feel safe with some of the people I hang out with. I was like, "What people?" Because I barely went out, and when I did, it was usually with coworkers or old friends from college. Karen goes, I heard from Tom that some of your friends are involved in stuff like drugs, and I don't want that around my baby." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm not even close to anyone involved in that kind of crap, and I told her that. But she just shrugged like she knew something I didn't. I remember feeling like my stomach dropped because it was so out of left field, but I figured she was just stressed out with the pregnancy and all. I tried to brush it off, but things didn't stop there. After that conversation, Karen got colder. She'd give me these looks, like I was in her way, and barely spoke to me unless it was to drop more passive-aggressive hints about me leaving. I knew something was off, but I didn't want to believe that she'd straight up make things up about me. I mean, it's my brother's wife. What reason would she have to lie? Well, fast forward a couple of weeks, and Tom starts acting distant too. It's not like him, so I asked him one night if everything was okay, and he just said Karen's been really stressed lately. He didn't bring up anything specific, but the vibe was off. Like, it felt like he was hiding something, but I didn't push him on it. So when Karen started acting a bit more distant, I didn't think much of it. I figured she just needed space or was going through her own stuff. But then, she started making these comments. Little things that, in hindsight, were probably meant to push me out without actually saying it outright. Like, she'd mention how small the house felt all of a sudden, or how she needed more room for the baby's stuff. There was one time she even joked, "Maybe you'll be moving out before the baby comes, right?" And then laughed it off like it was no big deal. I remember laughing with her, but deep down I was like, wait, is she serious? It wasn't just the comments, though. She started avoiding me more. If I was in the living room, she'd go upstairs or into another room. I'd try to make conversation, ask her about the pregnancy, if she needed anything, and she'd just brush me off. I was starting to feel like a ghost in the house. The weird part was that Tom never seemed to notice. He was so wrapped up in the baby stuff, planning for the future, that he didn't see what was happening right in front of him. And then there was the day Karen dropped the bomb about me supposedly flirting with her. I still can't wrap my head around it. It was a regular Tuesday. Tom was at work and I had the day off, so I figured I'd do some cleaning around the house. You know, help out since I was staying there for free. Karen was sitting in the living room just scrolling through her phone, not really paying attention to anything. I was in the kitchen wiping down the counters when she suddenly called out, "Can I talk to you for a second?" I walked over thinking she needed help with something, but the look on her face was just weird. She didn't seem upset, but there was something off about her expression, like she was about to drop some serious news on me. She started fiddling with her phone. I've noticed that I don't know how to say this, but you've been acting kinda flirty with me. I literally froze. I didn't even know what to say at first because it was so out of left field. Like what? Me? Flirting? With her? I laughed, thinking she was joking. Wait, what? Flirty? With you? That's crazy, Karen. But she wasn't laughing. She just stared at me, dead serious. No, I'm not kidding. Tom mentioned it to me too. He said he noticed it a while back. That's when the pit in my stomach dropped. Tom noticed it? What the hell was she even talking about? I had never, and I mean never, thought of Karen that way. She was my brother's wife, for crying out loud. The idea of flirting with her was insane. Karen, I don't know what you're talking about, I said, trying to stay calm. I wouldn't, that's not, but she cut me off. Look, I'm just telling you what I feel. And honestly, it's making me uncomfortable. I don't think it's a good idea for you to be here anymore, especially with the baby coming. I felt like the room was spinning. I didn't know how to respond. How do you defend yourself against something that never even happened? I wanted to scream, but I just stood there, completely blindsided. Tom said that? I finally managed to ask. She nodded, but something about the way she did it felt off. Like she wasn't telling the whole story, but I didn't know what part of it was missing. The rest of that conversation is kind of a blur. Karen kept talking about how it's not personal and it's just for the safety of the family, but all I heard was that she wanted me gone. The whole flirting thing was complete BS, but I didn't know how to prove it. And the fact that she claimed Tom noticed it too? That hurt the most. My own brother thought I was hitting on his wife. It didn't make any sense. After that day, things got real tense in the house. Karen stopped talking to me altogether, and Tom acted like everything was fine, but I knew he knew something was up. I tried to talk to him about it one night, but he just brushed me off, saying, Karen's been really stressed with the pregnancy. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally? How could I not take it personally when his wife was accusing me of something so ridiculous? It got worse when Karen started telling Tom that I was involved with bad people. She told him that some of my friends were into drugs and that she didn't feel comfortable having me around the baby if I was bringing that kind of influence into their home. I barely even had friends over. I didn't have a social life because I was working and saving up to move out. But somehow, Karen had convinced Tom that I was hanging out with sketchy people. I don't know if Tom actually believed her, or if he just didn't want to deal with the drama, but he started acting weird around me too. He'd come home from work and barely say a word to me, like I wasn't even there. It was obvious Karen had gotten into his head, but every time I tried to bring it up, he'd shut me down. Just give Karen some space, he'd say. She's going through a lot right now. It didn't matter what I said. Karen had already made up her mind and she was doing everything she could to push me out. And the worst part? She was using my brother to do it. It was like watching someone build a case against you for something you didn't even do, and you're just standing there, powerless to stop it. By this point, I knew I couldn't stay there much longer. I was already looking for apartments, but with the rent prices, it wasn't easy. I didn't have a lot of options, and the last thing I wanted was to end up on the streets. I was trying so hard to be patient, to not rock the boat, but deep down I knew it was only a matter of time before Karen made her final move. And when she did, I wasn't sure if Tom would have my back or if he'd side with her. So it finally happened. I knew it was coming, but when it did, it still hit me like a ton of bricks. Karen had been building up to this for weeks, and I guess I was just holding on to hope that Tom would step in and tell her to cut the crap. But yeah, that didn't happen. I had just gotten home from work, another long day at my new job, and all I wanted to do was relax for a bit. I walked in the door and everything seemed quiet. Too quiet, actually. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like something's off, but you can't put your finger on it right away. I headed towards my room, and that's when I saw it. All my stuff. My clothes, books, random belongings, packed up in boxes and bags, just sitting there in the hallway like trash waiting to be taken out. I stopped in my tracks. My heart started racing, and for a second I thought maybe there was some mistake. Maybe Karen was doing some weird cleaning thing, or I don't know. Maybe Tom was rearranging stuff. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. This wasn't some misunderstanding. I walked into the living room, and there was Tom, sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. He didn't look at me at first, didn't say anything either, just sat there in this awkward silence. Karen was nowhere to be found, of course, leaving him to do the dirty work. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel my anger bubbling up. Tom sighed, finally looking up at me with this guilty expression, like he was a little kid who got caught doing something wrong. Karen, she thinks it's time for you to move out, he said. His voice was so quiet, like he was ashamed of even saying it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you serious? You're kicking me out just like that? After everything? He didn't even try to defend himself. He just nodded, looking at the floor. It's not like that, he mumbled. It's just, Karen's stressed with the pregnancy, and she feels uncomfortable with you being here. You know, with everything going on. Everything going on? What did that even mean? I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't caused any problems. All I did was live there, help out, and keep to myself as much as possible. And now I was being thrown out because Karen felt uncomfortable. It was such BS, and Tom knew it too, but he wasn't going to stand up to her. I could see that clearly now. So that's it? You're just throwing me out on the street? I asked, my voice shaking with frustration. Over some lies Karen's been feeding you? I've done nothing but help around here, Tom. You know that. Tom stood up, running a hand through his hair, still avoiding eye contact. I'm not throwing you on the street, he said. I'll help you find a place. We can cover your security deposit, maybe even the first month's rent. It's not like we're abandoning you. Not abandoning me? It felt like the exact opposite. I wasn't asking for money. I was asking for some respect. For my own brother to have my back instead of just rolling over because his wife wanted me gone. Karen said I was flirting with her, Tom. She said I was hanging out with bad people. You really believe that? I asked, desperate for some kind of acknowledgement that he knew the truth. He didn't answer right away, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. He either believed her, or he was too scared to disagree with her. Either way, I was screwed. Look, he finally said, Karen's been really stressed, and with the baby coming, we just need a little more peace in the house. You've been great, and I appreciate everything you've done, but this is what's best for everyone. What's best for everyone? What about what's best for me? I wanted to scream, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. Karen had made up her mind, and Tom wasn't going to fight her on it. I was being pushed out, and there was nothing I could do to change it. I stood there for a second, trying to process it all. Part of me wanted to just storm out and never look back, but I had nowhere else to go. I didn't have savings for a new place yet, and I definitely didn't have any family I could turn to, at least not after this. Tom was the only one I thought I could count on, and now that bridge was burning right in front of me. When do I have to be out? I asked, my voice flat and defeated. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Karen was hoping by the end of the week, he said, almost like he was ashamed to even say it. The end of the week. That was 4 days away. 4 freaking days to find somewhere to live, pack up my life, and figure out how to survive on my own. Right, I muttered, shaking my head. Thanks for the heads up, I guess. I turned around, heading back to the hallway where all my stuff was piled up. I could feel Tom watching me, but I didn't bother looking back at him. What was the point? He wasn't going to change his mind, and even if he wanted to, Karen wouldn't let him. I started picking up the boxes, dragging them back into my room, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. I spent the next few days frantically searching for apartments, reaching out to anyone I could think of who might be able to let me crash for a while. It wasn't easy. Rent was high, and I didn't have enough saved up yet to afford anything decent. I kept thinking maybe Tom would come to his senses. Maybe he'd talk to Karen and realize how unfair this whole situation was. But every time I saw them together, it was clear that wasn't happening. Karen avoided me completely, barely even acknowledging my existence. And Tom? He was acting like this was all perfectly normal. By the time Friday rolled around, I still hadn't found a place. I was packing the last of my things into boxes, trying not to cry, when Tom knocked on the door. He stood there awkwardly for a minute, holding an envelope in his hand. Here, he said, handing it to me. It's for the security deposit and first month's rent. I hope it helps. I took the envelope without saying anything. I didn't want his money. What I wanted was for my brother to stand up for me, to tell Karen she was wrong, and that I didn't deserve to be treated like this. But that wasn't going to happen, and I knew it. I left that weekend with my boxes and bags, feeling more alone than I ever had before. Tom barely even said goodbye. Karen didn't come out at all. I was just gone, out of their lives like I never mattered in the first place. After getting kicked out of Tom's place, I spent the next few months pretty much in survival mode. I had nowhere to go at first, so I started crashing on friends' couches. You ever feel like you're imposing on people, even when they say it's okay? That's how I felt every single day. I was grateful for my friends letting me stay, but I knew deep down I couldn't keep doing it forever. I was just a guest, and they had their own lives to live. The hardest part was pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I didn't want to keep bringing up what happened with Tom and Karen. I didn't want people to think I was bitter or stuck on it, but truthfully, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It's not like I could just forget that my own brother tossed me out like I was nothing. But whenever someone asked how I was doing, I just smiled and said, I'm figuring things out, like it wasn't killing me inside. Couch surfing was rough. I couldn't settle anywhere, and I was constantly moving around with all my stuff in boxes and bags. There's something weird about living out of boxes for that long. You feel like you're always on the edge of being thrown out again. I'd pack everything up every time I left for work, just in case. It's like I didn't trust that I'd be welcomed back. It messes with your head living like that. I'll admit, things weren't great for a while. My job was okay, but it didn't pay enough for me to get my own place right away. I was trying to save, but you know how it goes. Every time I thought I was making progress, something would come up that wiped out my savings. Car trouble, bills, groceries. It felt like I was stuck, just treading water and trying not to drown. I thought about calling Tom a few times, asking him for help. But then I'd remember how things ended, and how easily he let Karen push me out. I couldn't go back to him. I couldn't go back to them. The fact that he never even checked on me after I left? That said everything. I wasn't important to him anymore. I was just another problem Karen solved. It's funny, though. You'd think getting thrown out by my own family would have broken me, but somehow it just made me more determined. I decided I wasn't going to rely on anyone else anymore. I was done with people letting me down, done with feeling like I owed anyone for a roof over my head. If I was going to get back on my feet, I was going to do it myself. So I started working harder, picking up extra hours at my job whenever I could. I cut back on everything. No new clothes, no going out, nothing that wasn't necessary. It was tough, but after a few months, I had enough saved up to finally get my own place. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small one-room studio apartment on the edge of town, but it was mine. No more bouncing from place to place, no more relying on anyone else. I finally had a place to call my own, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I remember the first night in my new apartment. I didn't have much, just a mattress on the floor and a couple of boxes of stuff, but it felt like freedom. It was quiet, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't have to worry about being kicked out. I didn't have to walk on eggshells or tiptoe around anyone's moods. It was just me, and that was enough. Even though I was proud of myself for getting back on my feet, it didn't take away the hurt. I still thought about Tom and Karen all the time. I thought about how easily they tossed me out when they didn't need me anymore. How Karen's lies about me flirting with her and hanging out with sketchy people were enough to convince Tom to kick me out without even giving me a chance to defend myself. It still stung, even if I was doing better. What made it worse was that no one in my family reached out. Not my parents, not my other siblings. It was like I didn't exist anymore. I guess Tom told everyone his side of the story, and I wasn't part of the picture they cared about. My parents always had this thing about keeping the peace, and I'm sure they thought it was easier to let Tom and Karen do whatever they wanted rather than confront them about what happened. But it still hurt, you know? It felt like I'd been erased from their lives, just like that. I focused on moving forward, though. I didn't have time to sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had bills to pay, and the rent wasn't going to take care of itself. So I kept working, kept grinding, and slowly, things started looking up. I got a promotion at work that helped with my finances. I started decorating my little apartment, making it feel like home. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I was proud of how far I'd come. One thing I learned during all this was that you can't depend on anyone else to fix your life. No one's coming to save you, and the people you think will always have your back might be the ones who push you down the hardest. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's the truth. You've got to look out for yourself, because when it all comes crashing down, the only person you can count on is you. Still, despite everything, there was a part of me that wished things had gone differently with Tom. I missed having a brother. I missed the way things used to be before Karen came into the picture and flipped everything upside down. But I knew I couldn't go back to that. I couldn't forget how they treated me, and I wasn't going to let them back into my life after what they did. They made their choice, and I had to live with mine. I hadn't spoken to Tom in almost a year by the time I felt like I was back on my feet. Every now and then, I'd get a text from him or Karen asking how I was doing or checking in, but I never responded. I couldn't. Not after what they put me through. I figured they'd moved on, too. They had their baby by now, and I'm sure their life was just fine without me in it. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. You don't just treat family like that and expect everything to be okay. I didn't know it at the time, but that whole situation was going to come back around eventually. And when it did, it was going to change everything. It had been about a year since I got my own place and went completely no contact with Tom and Karen. I'd done everything I could to put them behind me, but it's not like you can just erase family from your mind. Every now and then, I'd think about reaching out, but then I'd remember how they tossed me out like I was nothing. The thought of Tom believing Karen's lies still made me sick. Then, one day I got a call. I was sitting at my desk, half listening to a podcast when my phone started ringing. I glanced at the screen, and to my surprise, it was Tom. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, so seeing his name pop up gave me a weird feeling. Part of me wanted to ignore it, let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. So I did. Hello? I answered, trying to sound neutral, not wanting to show any emotion. There was a pause on the other end, and then Tom's voice came through, sounding different. He didn't sound like the confident, put-together older brother I used to know. He sounded desperate. Hey, he said, it's me. Yeah, I knew it was him. What's up? I replied, not wanting to make this easy for him. Tom hesitated, then sighed. Look, I'm just going to cut to the chase. We need help. Karen and we're losing the house. The business went under, and we're getting evicted. We've got nowhere else to go. I could feel my heart rate pick up. I hadn't heard from Tom in over a year, and now he was calling because he needed something? After everything they put me through? It was almost laughable. Part of me wanted to hang up right then and there, let them figure it out on their own. But the other part of me, well, it was complicated. So, what do you want from me? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. We were hoping... He paused, like he didn't even believe what he was about to say. We were hoping you'd let us stay with you, just for a few months, until we get back on our feet. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mind raced back to that day, coming home to find all my stuff packed in the hallway. The way Tom just stood there while Karen lied about me flirting with her. And now they wanted to stay with me? In my apartment? I let out a short laugh, more out of disbelief than anything. You've got to be kidding me, I said. I know how it sounds, Tom replied quickly, like he knew how ridiculous it was. But we've got 2 kids now. We don't have anywhere else to go. Please, we wouldn't ask if it wasn't an emergency. An emergency. So now I was supposed to forget everything and help them because they were in trouble. Where was that energy when I needed a place to stay? When Karen was throwing me out over lies and Tom just stood by and let it happen? Tom, I don't know what to tell you, I said, keeping my voice steady. You kicked me out when I needed help. Remember that? You and Karen didn't care then. Why should I care now? There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, and for a moment I thought he might hang up. But then he spoke again, and this time his voice was softer, like he was finally starting to get it. I know, he said. I know we screwed up. Karen, she was wrong. I was wrong for not standing up for you. I should have never let that happen. I should have had your back. Hearing him admit that gave me a weird mix of satisfaction and anger. It was the apology I had been waiting for, but it also felt too late. Like it didn't matter anymore. The damage was already done. What good was an apology now after all this time? I needed you, Tom, I said, my voice starting to crack. I needed my brother, and you let her lie about me. You let her make me out to be some kind of freak like I was flirting with her. You believed her over me. I know, he whispered. I'm sorry, I really am. But right now, we're desperate. We don't have anyone else to turn to. I'm asking you, as your brother, please, can we stay with you? I sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, trying to figure out what to say. A part of me wanted to tell him to shove it, to let him deal with the consequences of his choices. But another part of me, maybe the part that still cared about family, despite everything, was torn. I'd been through hell when they kicked me out. But did that mean I had to kick them when they were down too? Was it my responsibility to be the bigger person here? I need some time to think about it, I finally said, my voice tight. I understand, Tom replied, sounding relieved that I hadn't slammed the door in his face just yet. Take as much time as you need. I'm really sorry for everything, and I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. After we hung up, I just sat there for a while, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to laugh at the irony of the situation. They threw me out without a second thought, and now they were begging me for a place to stay. It felt like some kind of twisted karmic joke. But the truth was, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to be that person who holds grudges forever, But at the same time, I didn't want to be walked all over again. If I let them stay, would it just be another situation where they take advantage of me? Or would this be the moment where we all finally grew up and moved past what happened? I thought about it for days. My phone kept buzzing with texts from Tom, reminding me that they didn't have much time left before they had to move out of their house. My parents even got involved, sending me guilt-trippy messages about how family sticks together and how I should let bygones be bygones. But it wasn't that simple. Family sticking together only works when both sides actually give a damn about each other. And for a long time, it felt like I was the only one who cared. Update 1. I sat with the phone in my hand, staring at it like it was going to give me some kind of magical answer. After days of thinking about it, I had finally called Tom back. He didn't pick up right away, so I left him a message telling him I had made my decision and that he could call me back whenever he got the chance. Part of me felt like a huge weight had been lifted, but the other part was just anxious. Like, whatever was going to happen next would either be a huge mess or something that changed everything between us for good. I wasn't sure which way it was going to go, but I had to stick with my choice. About an hour later, Tom called me back. His voice sounded tense, like he had been holding his breath since I left the message. "So, what's your decision?" he asked, not even bothering with small talk. I took a deep breath. "Look, Tom, I thought about it a lot," I started, trying to keep calm, even though I felt like my heart was going to pound out of my chest. "And I can't let you and Karen stay with me." There was silence on the other end, like he wasn't sure he heard me right. "Wait, what? You're serious?" he finally said, sounding more shocked than angry. "After everything, you're really going to turn us away?" "After everything?" I shot back, feeling my voice get sharper. "You mean after you kicked me out of your house with no warning, based on lies Karen made up? You threw me out, Tom. I had nowhere to go. So, yeah, I'm serious." I could hear him breathing on the other end, like he was trying to figure out how to respond without blowing up. "I told you I was sorry for that. We were under a lot of stress. Karen was pregnant and things were just complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, my frustration boiling over. "You believed lies about me flirting with your wife and hanging out with drug dealers? You didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. And now, because things are bad for you, I'm supposed to just forget about all that?" "I'm not asking you to forget," Tom said, his voice more desperate now. "I'm asking you to help us. We've got kids now. This isn't just about me or Karen. We're your family." I felt a pang of guilt at that, but I wasn't going to back down, not after everything I'd been through. "Family? You weren't thinking about family when you threw me out. You weren't thinking about family when you let Karen lie about me. I had to figure it out on my own, Tom. Now it's your turn." There was another long pause. I could hear the frustration in his breathing again, but this time he didn't argue. He knew I was right. "Look," I continued, softening my tone just a little, "I'm not saying I don't care, but I can't let you stay with me. I've worked hard to rebuild my life, and I'm finally in a good place. I can't let you and Karen come in and mess that up again. You understand that, right?" "Yeah," Tom muttered. "I get it." It wasn't the answer he wanted, but I wasn't going to budge. I wasn't about to let him guilt-trip me into giving in. I'd come too far for that. "I'll help in other ways," I offered, feeling like I had to throw him something. "I'll help you find resources or places you can stay. But my home? That's off limits." There was a long silence on the other end, and for a second I thought Tom had hung up. But then he sighed, long and deep, like he was finally accepting it. "Okay," he said, his voice quieter now. "I understand. I'm not happy about it, but I understand." I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. It wasn't easy telling my own brother no, but I had to protect myself first. If I let him and Karen back into my life like that, I knew things would just end up the same as before, and I couldn't handle that again. "I really do hope things get better for you guys," I said, trying to end the conversation on a less tense note. "I'm sorry things are so hard right now." "Yeah, me too," Tom muttered. "Thanks for whatever help you can give." We said our awkward goodbyes, and that was that. I hung up the phone and just sat there for a minute, processing everything. I had said no. For once in my life, I had stood up for myself against my own family, and it felt weird. Part of me was proud, but another part was sad. I didn't like the idea of being estranged from Tom forever, but I knew this was the right thing to do. I had to draw the line somewhere. Over the next few days, I kept thinking about that conversation, replaying it in my head. I wasn't sure if Tom was mad at me or if he really understood where I was coming from, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let myself be guilted into something I wasn't comfortable with. My parents, of course, found out about the whole thing and tried to jump in with their family sticks together routine. They couldn't believe I said no, even after I explained everything that had happened with Tom and Karen. It's like they just didn't want to see the bigger picture. You should have helped them, my mom told me during one of our phone calls. They're struggling, and you've always been the one to help. This isn't like you. That last part stung a bit. Maybe it wasn't like me, but maybe that was the point. I'd always been the one to bend over backward for family, no matter how they treated me. But that's exactly why I had to say no this time. I wasn't the same person I was before. I had grown, learned to set boundaries, and this was one of them. I'm sorry, Mom, I said, trying to stay calm. But I've got to put myself first for once. Tom and Karen can figure it out. My parents didn't really get it, but that didn't surprise me. They weren't the ones who had been kicked out and left to fend for themselves. They weren't the ones who had to rebuild everything from scratch. I was, and I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel bad for protecting what I'd worked so hard to build. After that, things went quiet for a while. I didn't hear much from Tom or Karen, which was fine with me. They had their own problems to deal with, and I had mine. I helped them find a shelter that could take them in for a while, and that was the last I heard about it. No more desperate calls, no more guilt-tripping texts, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Story 2. My insane girlfriend drunkenly confessed to my friend that she is pregnant from her ex and plans to make me take care of the baby. Alright, so here's how it all started. One night, we were at this party that some friend of ours threw. It was nothing too fancy, just your usual hangout with people from school, you know? I was there with my girlfriend, Jessica. We'd been together since high school, about 3 years at this point. I really thought we had a future together, like, I was actually planning stuff with her. Marriage, traveling, even kids at some point. She was the girl I thought I'd be with for life. But man, that night changed everything. You ever get one of those moments where you can feel something's just off, but you can't really put your finger on it? Well, that was me. Jessica was acting kind of weird, but I didn't think much of it. She was talking with everyone, laughing a little too loud, just being extra. I figured she was just having fun, no big deal. So, I'm standing there, talking with a couple of my buddies, and that's when my friend Matt comes rushing up to me. And when I say rushing, I mean rushing. He had this look on his face like he didn't even know how to say what he had to say. I thought maybe someone had spilled a drink on my car or something stupid like that. But nope, it was way worse than anything I could have imagined. Matt grabs my arm, pulls me aside and goes, "Dude, I need to tell you something. Like, now." At this point, I'm starting to get a little freaked out because Matt's normally the chillest guy I know. He doesn't get worked up over much, so seeing him like this made my stomach drop. I'm like, "All right, man, what's up?" And he hesitates for a second, looks around to make sure no one's listening, and then he says it. Jessica just told me she's been hooking up with Ryan. Now, for context, Ryan is her ex-boyfriend from freshman year. They broke up way before we got together, but she always described their relationship as nothing serious, just some high school thing that didn't mean much. So hearing his name again, and in this way it felt like my brain couldn't even process it. I just stared at Matt for a second, not really understanding what he was saying. "Wait, what do you mean she's been hooking up with Ryan? Like, are you serious right now?" Matt nods, and he looks like he's gonna throw up. "She told me they've been sleeping together for months. And that's not even the worst part, dude. She's pregnant. She said it's his." At this point, my heart is pounding. I'm feeling all kinds of things. Confusion, anger, betrayal, you name it. And the worst part was, I couldn't even do anything right then. I was in shock. I mean, we'd been together for years, and I thought we had something real. I was already planning on going to my dream college, and now, out of nowhere, I'm hearing that my girlfriend's pregnant with her ex's baby? But Matt wasn't done. She also said she plans to make you raise it. That was it. That's when the world stopped for me. Everything I thought I knew about Jessica, about our relationship, just crumbled right there. The idea that she'd not only cheat on me, but then plan to trap me into taking care of a kid that wasn't even mine? I felt sick to my stomach. So I'm standing there, trying to keep it together, but I can't. I'm feeling so many things at once. Betrayed, heartbroken, and yeah, furious. I couldn't believe the girl I'd spent years with, the one I thought I was going to marry, could do something like this. I just remember looking at Matt and saying, I gotta go. I couldn't stay there anymore. I couldn't be around people, around Jessica. I had to get out of there before I lost it. I went home that night, but sleep? No way that was happening. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my head over and over again. I thought about all the times I had caught little things, like when I saw her texting Ryan a few months ago. I asked her about it and she brushed it off, saying it was just puppy love and nothing serious. She even had the nerve to ask if they could hang out because they were just friends now. Like an idiot, I trusted her. I figured if we were going to make it through college, we'd have to trust each other, right? God, I felt like such an idiot. The next morning, I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't just pretend I didn't know. I went over to her place, and the second she opened the door, I knew she was guilty. She tried to act surprised, like she didn't know why I was there, but I could see it in her eyes. She knew. I sat down on her couch, my heart racing, and I just asked her straight up, "Did you tell Matt you've been sleeping with Ryan?" Her face went pale. She tried to play dumb, laughing it off, saying something like, "Oh, that? I was just joking around. I was drunk and I thought it would be funny." I wasn't laughing. "You think it's funny to say you're pregnant with someone else's baby and that you're going to make me take care of it? You think that's funny?" She froze, and for a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, it was some twisted joke. But then I saw her eyes dart toward the door like she was ready to run. That's when I knew it was all real. I didn't even give her time to lie anymore. I pulled out the pregnancy test I'd picked up on the way over and tossed it on the coffee table. "Take it." Her hands started shaking, and that's when she broke down. "I'm sorry, okay? I messed up. It was only once. I don't even know if it's his for sure, but I need you, please. You're the better guy. I know you'd be a great dad." I couldn't believe the nerve of her. She was sitting there, crying, trying to make me feel bad for her when she's the one who betrayed me. I stood up and she grabbed my arm, begging me not to leave. But I couldn't stay, not after that. "I'm done," I told her. "We're done. You made your choice, and now you gotta deal with it." As I walked out, she kept calling after me, saying she loved me, saying it was all a mistake. But I couldn't even hear it. All I could think about was how I'd wasted 3 years of my life with someone who didn't even respect me enough to be honest. And that was just the beginning of the nightmare. So after that whole mess with Jessica, things just kept getting worse. I was trying to move on, but she wasn't having it. Like, I thought breaking up with her would mean things were over, but apparently she didn't get the memo. It's like she couldn't accept the fact that I wasn't coming back no matter how clear I made it. A few days after I left her place, she started blowing up my phone. Calls, texts, everything. She kept saying she wanted to explain or fix things, but honestly, there was nothing left to fix. The trust was gone. It was all gone. I'd see her name pop up on my screen and my stomach would just drop. I couldn't even bring myself to answer. I knew it would just be more of her trying to manipulate me into taking her back, or worse, trying to convince me to raise this kid that wasn't even mine. But the thing is, she didn't stop at just calling me. No, she took things up a notch. One evening, I was chilling at home, trying to just distract myself from everything, when my mom called me from downstairs. She sounded annoyed, so I knew something was up. I went down, and there she was, Jessica, standing on my doorstep, crying her eyes out, begging to talk to me. My mom didn't know the full story at this point, so she just looked confused. But I knew exactly what was going on. I walked down the stairs, and Jessica just launched into this whole emotional breakdown, saying how scared and alone she felt, how she made a mistake, and that she needed me. It was a mess. I wasn't ready for it, honestly. I mean, how do you even respond to that when you're the one who got stabbed in the back? But I knew I had to stay strong. I told her straight up that there was nothing left to talk about. We were done. Over. I didn't want to be with someone who could do that to me. She started crying harder, of course, trying to guilt-trip me like always. She begged me to just listen, and I figured maybe if I gave her 5 minutes, she'd leave me alone after. Spoiler, that didn't happen. So we went up to my room to talk, and the second she sat on my bed, it was like someone turned on a faucet. She started bawling again, saying how she still loved me and how Ryan didn't mean anything to her. She kept saying it was just one mistake, and that she wanted me to be the one to raise the baby because I'd be such a good dad. I could barely keep my cool at this point. I mean, really? I told her, as calmly as I could, that I wasn't interested in raising her ex's kid, no matter what. I wasn't even interested in being with her anymore. She couldn't understand why. She actually asked me why I wouldn't stay with her if the baby was mine, like she was expecting me to just forget the cheating. I just sat there, staring at her, completely stunned that she didn't get it. So I told her again, slowly, that I wasn't going to be with her even if the baby turned out to be mine. She tried arguing, saying it was just one time, and that she made a mistake, but I wasn't having it. Finally, after what felt like hours of this back and forth, I asked her to leave. She didn't want to go, but I told her there was nothing more to say. We were done. I had to practically push her out the door. She was still crying, still begging for another chance, but I just couldn't take it anymore. I needed her out of my life. But here's the thing. She didn't stop. Over the next few weeks, she kept showing up at my house unannounced, calling me nonstop, texting me about random stuff that had nothing to do with the baby. It was like she was trying to act like we were still together, even though I made it clear that we were over. There was this one time, this was probably the worst of it, where she showed up at my house at like 10 p.m. I was in my room, minding my own business, when I heard a knock on the door. I figured it was my mom or dad, but when I opened it, there was Jessica, standing there with this weird, desperate look on her face. Before I could say anything, she stepped into my room and tried to kiss me. I pushed her back, completely caught off guard. I couldn't believe she thought that was okay. I told her again, as firmly as I could, that we weren't together, and that I didn't want her showing up like this anymore. She got all teary-eyed again, saying she was so sad, and that the baby could feel her sadness or some nonsense. She kept trying to use that as an excuse to hang out with me. I had to stand my ground. I told her she needed to leave, and if she kept pulling this, I'd have to block her completely and cut off all contact. That seemed to finally get through to her, at least for a little while. But the worst part was, even though I knew I had to cut her out, it still hurt. Every time I saw her face or heard her voice, it reminded me of everything we were supposed to have. We were supposed to have a future together, and now all I could see was the betrayal. It was like this constant tug of war in my head. One part of me still wanted to be with her, the girl I thought I knew, but the other part of me knew that she wasn't that person anymore. Eventually, after what felt like forever, the results of the paternity test came back. I remember the exact moment I got the call. My heart was pounding in my chest as the doctor on the other end of the line confirmed what I already knew deep down. The baby wasn't mine. Relief and sadness hit me at the same time. On one hand, I was glad I wasn't tied to Jessica for the rest of my life, but on the other hand, it was the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. There was no coming back from this. Not that there ever was. I thought that would be the end of it, but Jessica, she had other plans. She kept trying to convince me to be the father anyway, because according to her, I was still the better choice. I told her to talk to Ryan since he was the real father, but she admitted that he didn't want anything to do with the baby and wanted her to terminate the pregnancy. I stood my ground. I told her it wasn't my responsibility anymore. She made her choice, and now she had to deal with it. But even then, it didn't feel good to say it. Deep down, it hurt, knowing that this kid would grow up without a dad. But I wasn't going to let her guilt me into being a part of this mess. It was a weird mix of relief and pain. I wasn't trapped with her, but it still hurt knowing that everything I thought we had was gone for good. Update 1. After everything that had already happened, I thought things couldn't get any crazier. I really did. I figured once the paternity test came back and proved I wasn't the father, Jessica would get the picture and finally leave me alone. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that I shouldn't expect anything when it comes to her. So a few weeks after I got the paternity results, I was starting to get my life back together. I had stopped answering her calls and texts, and she wasn't showing up at my house as much. It felt like things were getting back to normal, or at least as normal as they could be after everything that went down. But then, one night, I was just chilling in my room, trying to focus on my college plans when my phone buzzed. It was my dad. He never calls this late unless something's up, so I picked up right away. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the tension in his voice. "Did you get a girl pregnant and ditch her?" he asked, and I could tell he was trying to keep calm. My heart sank. I knew immediately this had to be Jessica. There's no way he'd just ask me that out of nowhere. "What are you talking about?" I replied, even though I knew exactly what was going on. "Jessica came by the house earlier today," he explained. "She's saying you're the father of her baby and that you've been ignoring her." I couldn't believe it. After everything, she was still trying to pull this crap? She knew I wasn't the father. She knew. But here she was, going behind my back, telling my parents some twisted version of the story. "She's lying," I said, trying to stay calm but feeling my blood start to boil. "I'm not the father. I got a paternity test, and it proved it wasn't mine. She cheated on me with her ex, Ryan. He's the one who got her pregnant." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could tell my dad was trying to wrap his head around it. "You have the test results?" "Yeah," I said. "I have them. I'll show you if you want, but trust me, she's lying." He sighed. "All right, I believe you. I wish you'd told us sooner. Your mom was pretty upset." "I get it. I probably should have filled them in earlier, but honestly, I didn't want to drag them into the mess. I was trying to handle it on my own, and I didn't expect Jessica to go this far. I told my dad I'd talk to my mom and clear things up, but I was fuming. I couldn't believe Jessica had the nerve to go to my parents' house and tell them I'd abandoned her. It was like she couldn't accept that I wasn't going to play her game anymore, so she was trying to drag my family into it. The next day, I talked to my mom. She was obviously upset but relieved when I showed her the paternity test results. It was hard seeing her so sad over the whole thing. Jessica had apparently broken down in front of her, crying and playing the victim card, saying how she was scared and alone and how I was the only one who could help her. She made it seem so real, my mom said, shaking her head. I can't believe she would lie like that. I couldn't either, but that's what Jessica did. She lied. She manipulated. And now she was trying to drag my family into her mess. With my parents on my side, I thought maybe that would be the end of it. Maybe now that she knew I had told everyone the truth, she'd finally leave me alone. But of course she didn't. A few days later, I got a message from one of my friends. Dude, have you seen Jessica's social media? He asked. I hadn't. I was doing my best to stay away from anything that had to do with her. But out of curiosity, I checked. And there it was, this long post about how she was going through the hardest time of her life and how she was being abandoned by the father of her child. She didn't mention me by name, but it was obvious who she was talking about. People in the comments were posting stuff like, "Stay strong, girl," and "You're going to be a great mom even if the dad's not in the picture." It was infuriating. She was spinning this whole narrative, making me look like the bad guy, and I couldn't even defend myself without making things worse. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Comment on her post like, "Actually, I'm not the father and she cheated on me with her ex?" That would just add fuel to the fire. I was venting to my friend Matt about it later that night. He's the one who told me about Jessica in the first place, so he's been there through all of this. "Man, she's not going to stop," he said. "She's trying to ruin your life because she can't handle the fact that you're not going to take her back." I knew he was right, and it sucked because there was really nothing I could do to stop her. She was going to keep telling people whatever she wanted, and I just had to live with it. The breaking point came a few weeks later when she showed up at my work. I was in the middle of my shift when I saw her walk in. My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen her in person since the whole paternity test thing, and I wasn't ready for this. She came right up to me, completely ignoring the fact that I was at work. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and serious. I pulled her aside, trying to keep things as calm as possible. "What do you want, Jessica?" "I can't do this alone," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. "You were supposed to help me. You were supposed to be there for me." "I'm not the father," I told her, for what felt like the millionth time. "I've done everything I can. You need to let this go." She didn't listen. She just kept going on and on about how scared she was, how she didn't know what to do without me. It was like she didn't even hear me when I said we were done. "I'm not going to be a part of this," I said firmly. "You need to figure this out with Ryan. I'm not going to raise his kid." That's when she lost it. She started crying, loudly, right there in the middle of my work. People were staring, and I felt like the ground was falling out from under me. I wanted to disappear. "I love you," she yelled through her tears. "You're the one I'm supposed to be with." It was a nightmare. I had to call my manager to get her out of the building, and the whole time she was screaming about how I was abandoning her and the baby. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, judging me, even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. That night, I knew I had to cut all ties with her completely. I blocked her number, her social media, everything. I told my parents not to answer if she showed up again, and I told my friends to stop telling me what she was posting online. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I thought I could get through it all quietly, but Jessica had other plans. Update 2. Alright, so after that meltdown Jessica had at my work, I thought I'd hit rock bottom with her antics. But oh man, I had no idea how much worse it could get. You'd think after getting her kicked out of my job and blocking her on everything, she'd get the message. She didn't. Not even close. A few days after the whole work incident, I was at home, finally starting to feel like I could breathe again. I'd cut her out, blocked her number, deleted her from all my social media. I wasn't hearing from her directly anymore, so I thought I was in the clear. But then, my mom called me into the living room. She had this weird look on her face, like she didn't know how to say what she was about to say. "Your dad and I got something in the mail today," she said, holding out this envelope. I took it and opened it up, and my stomach dropped. It was a letter from a lawyer. Jessica was trying to sue me for child support, for a baby that wasn't even mine. Now, you might be wondering how she could possibly think this was going to work. Well, turns out, she was claiming that because we had been in a relationship for so long, and she was pregnant during that time, I should be responsible for helping her out financially. She was saying that I had acted as a father figure, and that meant I should have to pay. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I was furious. This girl had not only cheated on me and lied about the baby being mine, but now she was trying to drag me into court over it? I couldn't let this slide. I immediately called my dad. I knew he'd have some advice, and he was just as angry as I was. "You need to get a lawyer," he said. "Don't let her get away with this. She's just trying to mess with your life." So that's exactly what I did. I found a lawyer and explained the whole situation. He was pretty confident that the case wouldn't hold up in court, especially since I had the paternity test proving the baby wasn't mine. But still, it was a hassle I didn't need. Just the thought of having to go to court, sit in front of a judge, and deal with Jessica again made me sick to my stomach. A few weeks later, the court date rolled around. I walked into that courtroom feeling nervous as hell. I mean, yeah, I had all the evidence on my side, but still, it was nerve-wracking. Jessica was there, sitting at the other table, looking all smug like she thought she was about to win something. It took everything in me not to lose my cool. The judge started going through the paperwork, and my lawyer presented the paternity test right off the bat. I could see Jessica's face change when he brought it up. She went from looking confident to suddenly shifting in her seat, like she realized she might have messed up. The judge took one look at the results and then asked Jessica's lawyer why they were even here if I wasn't the father. Her lawyer tried to make some excuse about emotional bonds or some nonsense like that, but it wasn't working. The judge wasn't having it. I'll never forget what the judge said next. He looked right at Jessica and said, "Miss, this young man is not the father of your child, and there's no legal obligation for him to support you. This case is dismissed." I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. It was finally over. I thought, finally, I'm done with this nightmare. But of course, it wasn't that simple. Even after the court case was thrown out, Jessica didn't back off. She doubled down on her harassment. She started sending me these weird, guilt-tripping messages from random phone numbers, talking about how she was ruined because of me, how she was struggling to make ends meet, and how her life was falling apart. She made it sound like it was my fault that Ryan didn't want to step up and be a dad. Like I was somehow responsible for her entire situation. I didn't respond. I couldn't. What was I supposed to say to that? I wasn't going to let her drag me back into her mess. The next few weeks were quiet. I started focusing on my own life again, working extra shifts, planning for college, trying to rebuild some of the peace she had destroyed. But every time I started to feel normal again, something else would happen. One day I came home from work, and my mom was sitting at the kitchen table, looking stressed. "Jessica came by today," she said, her voice tight. "She was crying, saying you've ruined her life." I could feel the anger boiling up inside me again. "What did she say?" "She just kept going on about how you left her when she needed you the most, and how she doesn't know what to do anymore," my mom replied, shaking her head. "I told her she needs to leave you alone, but she wouldn't listen. She said she's desperate." That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to stop this once and for all. I called my lawyer again, explaining what was going on, and he suggested I file for a restraining order. I didn't want to go that far, but at this point, I didn't have a choice. She wasn't going to leave me alone unless I took some serious action. So, I filed for the restraining order. I thought maybe that would scare her enough to finally back off. It was a tough decision, but I couldn't keep living with this constant anxiety, wondering when she was going to show up at my house or my work again. The day of the restraining order hearing came, and Jessica actually had the nerve to show up. She looked like she had been crying, like she was still trying to play the victim, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I told the judge everything, how she had been harassing me, showing up unannounced, spreading lies about me, and even trying to sue me for child support. The judge didn't take long to make a decision. He granted the restraining order, and Jessica was officially barred from contacting me or coming near me. It was the biggest relief I'd felt in months. I walked out of that courtroom, feeling like I could finally breathe again. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but Jessica didn't go down quietly. Even with the restraining order in place, she still tried to send me messages through mutual friends, trying to get sympathy and making it sound like I was the bad guy. But at least now, I had something legal on my side. If she kept pushing, I knew I had a way to stop her. It wasn't the closure I wanted, but it was the closest I was going to get. At the end of the day, I had to focus on moving forward with my life. I had dreams, goals, and a future ahead of me that didn't involve her. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was free. Update 3. So, after getting the restraining order, I thought things were finally calming down. For the first time in months, I could actually focus on my life and not constantly worry about Jessica popping up out of nowhere. The whole ordeal had left me pretty messed up mentally, but I was determined to move on and put all that behind me. I figured I'd done everything I could to keep her out of my life, and that was it. Turns out, I was wrong. Even with the restraining order in place, Jessica wasn't done trying to make things difficult for me. She didn't try to contact me directly anymore, thankfully, but she started using a different tactic that I didn't see coming. It all started when my cousin Jake called me one afternoon. He sounded weirdly hesitant, which was strange because Jake's usually the kind of guy who just says whatever's on his mind. He goes, "Hey man, I don't know how to tell you this, but Jessica's been talking to people." I was like, "What do you mean, talking to people?" I knew he wasn't talking about normal conversations, so I already had that sinking feeling in my gut. "She's been telling everyone in the group that you're the reason her life is ruined," he continued. "She's making it sound like you abandoned her and the baby, and people are starting to believe her." That hit me like a truck. I couldn't believe it. Even after the restraining order and everything that happened in court, she was still out there spreading lies, and now she was using my friends to try and make me look like the bad guy. I was furious. Like, I couldn't even speak for a minute because I was so angry. "Who's she been talking to?" I finally asked. Jake listed off a few names of people we both knew, people who'd known us back when Jessica and I were still together. Most of them hadn't reached out to me, so I didn't even know this was happening. Apparently, she was making up stories about how I'd left her when she needed me the most, and now she was alone, struggling to raise the baby. She conveniently left out the part where the baby wasn't mine and how she cheated on me. I couldn't let this slide. I wasn't about to just sit there while she tried to turn my friends against me. I started calling people, one by one, explaining the real story. Most of them believed me, especially after I mentioned the paternity test and the restraining order, but a couple of them were already pretty far gone, too deep in Jessica's web of lies. I got messages like, "Dude, she's really struggling and you just left her? That's harsh." Or, "I don't know, man. Maybe you could have helped her out more." It was like no matter how much I explained, some people just couldn't understand the whole picture. They saw Jessica as this poor, helpless girl who got left behind, and no matter what I said, they couldn't let go of that image. But the worst part? There were a few people who outright told me they didn't want to hang out with me anymore. These were people I'd known for years, and suddenly, because of Jessica's lies, they were distancing themselves from me. It was like I was losing friends left and right, and there wasn't much I could do about it. It was frustrating, to say the least. I tried not to let it get to me, but after a while it started to wear me down. I couldn't believe how one person could cause so much damage to my life, even after I thought I was free from her. But despite all that, I wasn't about to let her win. I decided to keep my circle small and focus on the people who actually believed me and supported me. Jake was a huge help during this time, always backing me up and calling people out on their crap when they tried to defend Jessica. He had my back when I needed it the most, and honestly, without him, I don't know if I would have gotten through all of this as easily as I did. Still, things weren't perfect. The rumors kept floating around, and I had to hear from random people about the things Jessica was saying. But I kept my distance and focused on myself. I started preparing for college again, picking up extra shifts to save up some money. I was determined to move on with my life and not let Jessica or her lies hold me back any longer. Then, one day, I got a call from Ryan. Yeah, that Ryan, Jessica's ex and the actual father of her baby. We hadn't spoken since everything went down, so I was surprised to hear from him. I answered the phone, half expecting him to start some drama, but he sounded defeated. "Hey, man," he said, his voice low. I just, I wanted to apologize." Now that threw me off. Apologize? Ryan? This was the guy who had been hooking up with my girlfriend behind my back, and now he wanted to say sorry? "For what?" I asked, still not sure what was going on. "For everything," he said. "I didn't know she was going to pull all this on you. She's been telling everyone that I bailed on her too, and I guess I just realized how messed up the whole situation is." Apparently, Jessica had been doing the same thing to him, telling people he was a deadbeat dad, that he'd abandoned her and the baby. She was trying to play both sides, making him look bad to his friends while making me look bad to mine. It was like she was burning every bridge in her life and taking everyone down with her. Ryan went on to explain how he was trying to step up as a father, but Jessica had made it nearly impossible. She was refusing to let him see the baby unless he agreed to get back together with her, which obviously wasn't going to happen. He was just as stuck as I had been. "I don't know what to do anymore," he admitted. "She's out of control." For the first time in this whole mess, I actually felt a little bad for the guy. Yeah, he'd messed up by getting involved with Jessica again, but it was clear he hadn't expected things to spiral like this. And honestly, it felt kind of good to know I wasn't the only one who saw how manipulative she could be. We talked for a while, mostly about how insane the whole situation had become. By the end of the conversation, I realized that while Jessica had caused me a ton of pain, she wasn't going to win. Not with me, and definitely not with Ryan. We were both determined to move on from her and rebuild our lives without her dragging us down anymore. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't instant, but eventually things did start to get better. I went off to college, met new people, and slowly but surely, the drama with Jessica became just a distant memory. Every now and then, I'd hear about her through mutual friends. She'd post something cryptic on social media or try to stir up more drama, but I didn't care anymore. I was finally free, for real this time. Story 3. Mom's convinced the court will give her my house. She has no idea what's coming. So here's how I ended up in this whole mess. Years ago, I was lucky enough to buy a small starter home during the housing market crash. I got it on my own, no help, no cosigner, just me grinding away and saving up. It wasn't anything fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a little yard, but it was mine. I lived there for almost a decade, just working my way up and focusing on saving for something bigger down the line. Then, fast forward, I meet my now husband, and we eventually decide it's time to upgrade. We pooled our money, got a nice place with more space, and I kept the old house as an extra asset. I figured maybe we'd rent it out at some point or just hang on to it as a backup. Nothing serious, but hey, it's an option, right? Now here's where my parents come in. They've had a rough go financially, to put it mildly. A couple of years back, they lost their own place to foreclosure, which I guess was always kind of hanging over their heads. I can't even count how many times they've moved since I was a kid because they were either renting places they couldn't afford or dealing with landlords that ended up kicking them out. Anyway, after the foreclosure, they're living in this tiny rental and hinting pretty hard that they're tired of bouncing around. That's when they start eyeing my little house, saying it's perfect for them. Small, easy to maintain, nothing that'd break their backs or whatever. They're retired too, which doesn't help the situation. My dad's health isn't great, and he finally hung up his work boots after 36 years of a physically demanding job. My mom? Well, she's never worked, so they're just scraping by on his retirement, barely covering their essentials. At first, they wanted to live there rent-free. Yeah, you read that right. But I shut that down fast. I mean, come on, I'm not a charity, and even if they're family, there's no way I was going to have them squatting in a house I worked my ass off to own. So I suggest a fair deal. Way below market rent, just to cover the basics. Now, out of nowhere, they get this inheritance, right? It's not a small sum either, easily 6 figures. My mom calls me all excited, going on about how they've finally caught a break, and they're going to pay off my house. I remind her it's not really paying it off because the house was already paid off. But whatever, I go along with it. Let them feel good about helping me out. We settle on this arrangement where they use part of the inheritance to prepay their rent, which basically covers a few years up front. I make it crystal clear that this is rent, not some buy-in deal or them buying ownership. They're just tenants. So we get a lease drawn up. I spell out every single thing in writing to keep things straight. This lease is not just some handshake deal either. It's written, notarized, everything done by the book. They're tenants, plain and simple, and all they need to do is pay taxes and insurance on the place, which comes out to around $350 a month. We agreed on this to keep things simple and so they wouldn't worry about a big monthly payment. But as soon as the lease is signed, it's like my mom's got it in her head that this arrangement means they own the place somehow. She's acting like it's their forever home, telling me how she's going to start decorating, planting gardens, making little improvements. Okay, whatever, no big deal, right? I let it go thinking it's harmless stuff. The last thing I'm thinking is that she'd get it twisted and think they own the place. But looking back, that was probably my first mistake. Anyway, fast forward a few years. I'm not making a single cent on this place. They're paying peanuts to live there, and honestly, I could be getting a lot more if I rented it out to someone else. But hey, they're family, so whatever. Then one day, I have to tell them about a tiny increase in rent. I'm talking $3. $3 freaking. Insurance went up a tiny bit, so I figured I'd just let them know the rent would adjust to cover it. It's like less than the cost of a coffee. And that's when my mom completely loses her mind. I call her up, and I'm like, hey, just wanted to give you a heads up that insurance went up, so rent's gonna go up by $3. It's not much, just something small. And I kid you not, she goes off on me like I just raised it by $300. She's yelling, saying how I'm milking them, calling me greedy, acting like I'm some sort of money-hungry landlord. She's bringing up stuff like, we paid off the mortgage, we deserve to live here without any increases. She's throwing all these wild accusations out of nowhere. I'm floored. I remind her again that they didn't pay off my mortgage. They paid an upfront amount as rent, plain and simple. But she's so deep in her delusions that she actually thinks she's got some claim on the place. She even said, I can't believe you do this to your own parents. Like, seriously? And then she hits me with the kicker. She starts threatening to take me to court, saying a judge would side with her because they've put so much into the house. She's talking about all these tiny things she's done: planting flowers, repainting the mailbox, putting in a new garden, things that honestly are just cosmetic stuff that she wanted, not things that add value to the house, and she's acting like that means she's entitled to it. At this point, I'm just kind of in shock. I mean, we have a notarized lease. I'm the only one on the deed. There's no gray area here, no legal loophole for her to jump through. It's all in black and white, but she's convinced she's got this massive case against me. She's calling me every name in the book, saying how ungrateful I am, how I'm just taking advantage of her and Dad. My dad, meanwhile, is just standing there, quiet as a mouse, not saying a word to back me up, which honestly is pretty standard for him. That call was my wake-up moment. I realized just how far off the deep end she'd gone with this whole thing. She'd convinced herself this was her house, her right, her reward or whatever for putting in some flowers and painting a few walls. It wasn't about $3 anymore. It was about control. In her mind, this was her home now, and I was just the kid who happened to own it on paper. Looking back, maybe I should have seen it coming. There were red flags all along. But I guess I just didn't want to believe my own mother would try to pull something like this. I mean, who does that? All right. So after that last blowout with my mom over the $3 rent increase, things just kept escalating. I figured she'd cool down after a few days, maybe realize how ridiculous she was being. $3. But no, she's only getting more worked up. She's calling me, texting me, throwing out all these demands. Every message is a mix of guilt trips and anger, and each one more over the top than the last. Stuff like, after everything we've done for you, or, we're the reason you even own that house in the first place. And then she drops the classic, you're trying to put your own parents out on the street. Yep, that's my mom's go-to move when she's losing an argument. She plays the martyr card, full force. Like she's acting like I'm Scrooge, and she's Tiny Tim begging for scraps. I ignore most of it, figuring it's just her blowing off steam. But then my dad jumps into the mess. He's usually the quieter one, just goes along with whatever she says. But now he's calling me up, saying things like, your mom's just stressed, maybe you should hear her out, and she feels like you're taking advantage of us. At this point, I'm beyond annoyed, so I just tell him straight up, look, if she thinks there's some big issue here, she's welcome to bring it up to a lawyer. Honestly, I was hoping that'd be the end of it, that mentioning a lawyer would make them realize how pointless this whole thing was. But no. Instead, my mom takes it as a challenge. Next thing I know, she's telling me she's considering legal options. I almost laughed. Considering legal options over a $3 rent increase? Like, come on. But here's where things start getting really out of hand. She demands to see the bills. She wants a full breakdown of every single charge I'm forcing on them. Apparently, she thinks I'm making up numbers to squeeze extra cash out of them. My dad, who's supposed to be the reasonable one, backs her up, saying something like, we just want transparency. They're acting like I'm running a scam operation out of this tiny house, so fine. I send over copies of the taxes and insurance showing them exactly what's going on. Nothing hidden, nothing weird, just the regular charges. But apparently, even that's not enough. My mom has all these theories now. She's convinced I'm hiding something, that there's more to the $3 hike. She starts nitpicking every line, acting like she's some sort of tax auditor. I'm getting messages at all hours, random questions about property tax rates, why the insurance went up, and whether I've considered other providers. All of this for $3 freaking dollars. It's like she's forgotten I'm her kid and not some landlord she's trying to take down. Finally, after a few days of her constant questions, I snap. I tell her flat out that I'm not making any money off this deal, that they're living there for a fraction of what I could charge someone else. And then I hit her with the truth. If you don't like the setup, you're welcome to leave. I know it sounds harsh, but I was done being nice. They're acting entitled, treating me like a business enemy, when really I'm bending over backward to help them out. Well, that's when things take a turn. My mom goes from accusing me to threatening me. She says, if you want to treat us like renters, fine, but don't expect us to just sit back and do nothing. We're going to show a judge everything we've done for that house. She's talking about the garden she planted, the new mailbox she put up, and a few cosmetic things she's done over the years. In her mind, these little fixes are grounds for claiming ownership or something. Now, this is where my patience finally snaps. I remind her as calmly as I can that they signed a lease, and that lease makes them tenants. I'm the only one on the deed, and legally, they don't have any claim to the house, but she's not having it. She starts saying stuff like, we've lived here for years, this is our home, and you're not just going to kick us out. She even says she's willing to go to court to fight for her rights. I can't believe what I'm hearing. My own mother is basically threatening to drag me into court over a house she's renting for pennies. I tell her, look, if you really think you've got a case, go for it. I'll be waiting. Honestly, I was just fed up. I didn't actually think she'd do it. I mean, who does that to their own kid? But then my dad chimes in trying to play peacemaker. He's like, maybe we can sit down and talk this through, find a compromise. And here's the thing. I'd normally be up for that. I'd be happy to talk it out, to try and fix things. But at this point, they've pushed me too far. They're treating me like I'm some villain when all I did was ask for a tiny adjustment in rent. So I tell him, there's no compromise here. Either you pay the $3 or you move out. Simple as that. After that call, I'm thinking maybe it's over. Maybe they'll finally see how ridiculous they're being. But no. The next day, I get this long-winded message from my mom. It's basically her final argument, listing every single thing they've done to make the house livable. She's going on about how they fixed the shed roof, which was a minor patch job at best, how they planted flowers in the yard, and even how they replaced a hose that had a small leak. She's acting like these little chores entitle her to partial ownership of the place. At this point, I'm sitting there, reading this list, and I just start laughing. It's like she's writing out a list of housework as if it's a down payment. She's genuinely convinced that fixing a leaky hose somehow gives her a stake in the property. It's unreal. But then I get to the end of her message, and it's the kicker. She says, if you don't recognize everything we've done, we'll be forced to take legal action. She's not asking. She's threatening, straight up saying they're going to go to court. I'm blown away. She's really willing to drag me through all this over a measly rent increase. And I know some people might say, why not just drop it? It's only $3. But it's not about the money at this point. It's about the fact that she's acting like the house is hers when it's not. I've got a signed lease, notarized and everything, and they're just tenants. But my mom's got it in her head that she's entitled to way more than what's fair, and my dad's too whipped to tell her otherwise. So I decide I'm done playing nice. I send her a simple message. You're either willing to pay the rent as agreed, or you can leave. No apologies, no compromises. They've made this way more complicated than it needed to be, and I'm not bending anymore. The silence after that was deafening. No texts, no calls, nothing. For a moment, I actually thought they backed off, maybe finally accepted that I wasn't going to budge. But knowing my mom, I knew she was just regrouping, figuring out her next move. And deep down, I had a feeling this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. After my last message to them, things went radio silent. And when I say silent, I mean like eerily silent. No calls, no angry texts from my mom, nothing. At first, I thought maybe they'd finally taken a step back and realized how nuts this whole situation was. But as the days passed, that gut feeling kicked in. I knew my mom better than that. Silence, in her world, was just a buildup. She was cooking something up. Sure enough, a few days later, I get a call from my dad. Now, usually he's the calm one, the voice of reason who tries to keep the peace. But this time, he's on edge, and it doesn't take long for him to spill why he's calling. He wants a sit-down meeting. He's all, let's get together and have a mature discussion about all this, face to face. The way he's talking, it sounds less like a request and more like a demand. Honestly, I'd already had it up to here with both of them, but he sounded desperate. And against my better judgment, I agreed to meet up. I figured, what's the harm? Maybe if they see me in person, I can finally make them understand that all of this is just delusional. So we set a time to meet at a local diner. I walk in, and right away, I see my parents sitting in a booth. My mom's sitting there with her arms crossed, looking like she's already prepared to tear into me, and my dad's looking at the menu like he's hoping it'll somehow keep him out of whatever's coming. I sit down, say a quick, hey, and before I even get comfortable, my mom starts in on me. She's like, I can't believe you're making such a big deal over this. And this is how you treat the people who raised you? I let her rant for a bit, not really saying much, just letting her go. She's laying it on thick, talking about how they've done everything for me and how this house was supposed to be their safe place, especially now that they're older. She's got this dramatic tone going, like she's giving some sort of emotional speech, and I'm just sitting there trying not to roll my eyes. When she finally stops for a breath, I look at her and just say, Mom, this isn't your house. You signed a lease. You're renting. I'm not your landlord because I want to squeeze you dry. I'm your landlord because it's the only way to keep things fair. Her face goes red, and my dad, who's been quiet up until now, jumps in. He's like, well, can't you understand how she feels? It's a small amount, and she feels like we're being treated like strangers. I get it. He's trying to smooth things over, but it just feels like he's enabling her more. I turn to him and tell him, Look, Dad, you agreed to this setup. You both did. This isn't about feelings. It's a legal agreement. My mom isn't having it, though. She switches tactics, starts bringing up all this old baggage from when I was younger, stuff I didn't even realize was still in her head. She's saying things like, "Do you remember all those times we took care of you, gave up things for you? And how could you forget everything we sacrificed?" It's like she's trying to guilt trip me into giving up my own house. And I'll be honest, it hit a nerve. It's not like I don't appreciate what they did, but this is something different. I tell her as calmly as I can, "I'm not going to forget what you did for me, but that doesn't mean you get to treat me like I owe you my house. You're paying next to nothing in rent. I could have rented this place out for 3 or 4 times as much. This isn't about the money. This is about the principle." And that's when she flips again. She starts accusing me of being greedy, telling me I'm money hungry, and that I only care about myself. It's like she's got this script in her head, and no matter what I say, she's sticking to it. She even says something like, "You're lucky we're not asking for more considering all the work we've done." I almost laugh. Work? The garden she planted, the tiny fixes? This is stuff they wanted, not stuff that adds any actual value to the house. I tell her, "Mom, none of that changes the fact that I'm the one who bought this house. I'm the one who paid for it, and I'm the one who's on the deed." And then my dad chimes in again, but this time he's got this edge to his voice I've never heard before. He goes, "Well, maybe if you're so hung up on the legal side, we should look at this differently. Maybe we should get someone to assess what we've put into the place." I look at him, stunned. My own dad, suggesting they could get some kind of reimbursement for minor cosmetic stuff they wanted in the first place. That's when it hits me just how deep they're in this whole delusion. They actually believe they have some kind of ownership here, that they're entitled to something more just because they've been living there. I lean back and take a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. I look them both in the eyes and say, "You're on the lease, you're tenants. There's nothing more to this." My dad mutters something about fairness, and my mom, of course, goes right back to accusing me of trying to take advantage of them. It's like talking to a brick wall. Finally, I just tell them, "If you're really that unhappy, then move. You're not stuck here. You don't have to pay me rent if you don't want to live in the house, but you can't stay there and act like you own the place. That's not how this works." They both go quiet. My dad's looking at the table, and my mom just glares at me, pure anger in her eyes. She's not used to being told no, especially by me. Growing up, I always tried to make things easier for them, went along with what they wanted just to avoid conflict. But this was too much. We sit there in silence for a good few minutes. The tension's so thick you could cut it with a knife. I can tell they weren't expecting me to hold my ground. I was supposed to fold, to give in and let them have their way, but I'm done with that. This is my house, my property, and they don't get to walk all over me just because they're my parents. Finally, my dad looks up and says, "Well, think about it." No apologies, no recognition of what they're putting me through, just a vague promise to think about it. I nod and say, "Fine." Then I get up, throw a couple of bills on the table for my coffee, and walk out without another word. As I leave, I feel this strange mix of frustration and relief. Frustrated that it's come to this, but relieved that, for once, I didn't back down. I didn't let them guilt trip me or make me feel like I owed them more than I already have. In the back of my mind, though, I know this isn't over. Not by a long shot. My mom doesn't let go of things easily, and from the way she looked at me, I could tell she was already plotting her next move. But for now at least, I made it clear where I stand. So, after that intense meeting with my parents, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would cool down a bit. I mean, I laid it all out for them, made it crystal clear this wasn't their house, they were tenants, and that was that. I really thought they'd take a step back, process it, and come to their senses. Wishful thinking, I guess. The silence lasted maybe a week. Then, out of nowhere, my phone lights up with a call from my mom. I'm bracing myself as I pick up, expecting another round of the same arguments. But this time she sounds different. Her voice is calm, almost too calm, and she asked me to come by the house to go over some things. I don't know why, but that weird tone in her voice had me feeling uneasy, like she was planning something. But I decide to go, thinking maybe we could actually resolve things for once. When I pull up to the house, my dad's sitting on the front steps. He looks nervous, which isn't like him. He barely says hi as I walk up, just kind of nods and gestures for me to go inside. That's when I see my mom standing in the living room with a stack of papers. I'm already on edge, and as soon as I see that stack, I know whatever's coming isn't going to be good. She starts off with this rehearsed speech, saying she understands that it's my house on paper, but insists they've put so much into it over the years that they should have some rights too. Then she slides the stack of papers over to me, saying, "These are estimates of everything we've done to make this place livable." I look at the top page, and it's a breakdown of costs she's claiming they invested in the house. There's stuff like landscaping improvements, aka the garden she planted for her own enjoyment, shed repairs, a few nails and shingles on the shed roof, and general maintenance, aka regular house upkeep any tenant would do. She's acting like every dollar she spent on a bag of soil or a can of paint is some kind of equity stake in the house. I can't even process it for a second. It's like she's trying to build a case that they've poured so much into this place that they deserve ownership. I flip through the pages, and every line item is more ridiculous than the last. I'm talking about stuff like new mailbox installation and replaced garden hose. It's like she's trying to tally up every minor thing she's ever bought for the house, as if that's proof it's hers. I take a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and I ask, "Mom, what exactly are you trying to do here?" She looks at me dead serious and says, "We're just making sure you know the value of everything we've done here, in case this goes to court." I almost laugh. I'm standing there, holding this stack of papers full of random home improvements, and she's talking about going to court over it. It's like she's forgotten everything about the lease, the deed, all of it. I try to tell her again, "Mom, you signed a lease, you're tenants. All this stuff you're listing here, none of it gives you any legal claim to the house." But she's already dug in. She's saying stuff like, "A judge would see all the work we've done and realize this isn't just a rental." She's talking like she's some legal expert, saying she's done her research, and that she has every right to make these claims. And my dad? He's just sitting there, not saying a word, which tells me he's either in full agreement with her, or just doesn't have the guts to tell her she's out of her mind. Finally, I just lay it out. I tell her, "Mom, none of this is going to change the fact that the house is mine. A court isn't going to care about a garden or a mailbox, it's my property." But she's not budging. She says something like, "Well, maybe a judge would see things differently. Maybe they'd agree we deserve some compensation for everything we've done here." Now I realize she's not just looking for ownership, she's fishing for money. She's hoping that by throwing around terms like compensation and value, she can guilt trip me into paying her off or something. It's wild. The same mom who once told me not to expect a dime from them, who made me pay rent as soon as I got a job, is now standing here acting like I owe her something. I put the stack of papers back on the table and tell her, "I'm not giving you any compensation for doing regular tenant stuff. You agreed to the lease, and that's the deal." She's fuming, but I can see that it's finally sinking in that I'm not going to back down. That's when she switches gears again and hits me with, "Well, if that's how you feel, then maybe we should just stop paying rent altogether." I'm stunned. I tell her, "You realize if you don't pay rent, I can evict you, right?" But she's acting like that's exactly what she wants. She's all, "Go ahead, try to evict us. We'll tell the court everything we've done for this place, and they'll see we have a right to stay." At this point, it feels like I'm talking to a stranger. My own mother is practically daring me to kick her out, as if that's somehow going to make her look like the victim and me the villain. It's like she's playing some twisted game of chicken, trying to see if I'll blink first. I look over at my dad, hoping he'll jump in and bring some sanity back into the conversation. But he just shrugs, looking almost apologetic, and mutters something like, "Your mom's been through a lot. Just think about it." Think about it? Think about what exactly? Giving in to her demands, acting like I owe her something for being my tenant? No way. So I lay it out one final time. I tell them, if you want to stay here, you stick to the lease. You pay rent, cover the taxes and insurance, and that's it. If you don't want to pay, then you'll have to move. My mom's face goes from anger to something like hurt, like she can't believe her own kid is standing up to her like this. But honestly, I'm done bending over backward to make her happy. I'm done letting her guilt trip me into giving her whatever she wants. I tell them both, "You have until the end of the month to decide. Either you pay what we agreed, or you move out." Then I turn around and walk out, not even waiting for a response. As I get in my car, I feel this weight lift off my shoulders. I'm done letting her manipulate me, done letting her act like this is her house. But at the same time, I know this isn't the end. If anything, I've just made things worse. My mom's the kind of person who doesn't take no lightly, and from the way she looked at me, I know she's not about to let this go. So yeah, I'm preparing myself for whatever's coming next because, knowing her, it's going to be a fight. But for once, I feel ready to handle it. She might think she's got the upper hand, but I've got the law on my side, and I'm not backing down. Update. After that last showdown, I didn't hear a single word from my parents for a couple of weeks. Honestly, the silence felt almost Peaceful? I mean, yeah, part of me knew this was the calm before the storm. But I needed the break. I needed some space to think about everything that had gone down, to remind myself that standing my ground wasn't being cruel. It was just doing what was fair, what was right. But of course, peace doesn't last long in my family. Out of nowhere, my mom calls me up. This time, there's no yelling, no accusations right off the bat. She sounds almost polite. She tells me she wants to put this behind us, that she's been thinking about it all and she just wants a compromise. I should have known better, but for some reason, I believed her. I guess I just wanted things to go back to normal, to have some kind of peace. So, against my better judgment, I agree to meet her at the house one last time. When I show up, she's waiting on the porch with my dad. The vibe is weird. My mom's standing there, looking serious, while my dad is sitting on the steps, staring off into space like he'd rather be anywhere else. I walk up, nod to both of them, and my mom jumps right in, not wasting a second. Listen, she says, we've decided to meet you halfway. Now, right away, this doesn't sit right. Knowing her, meeting halfway usually means me doing all the compromising while she gets what she wants. But I stay quiet, letting her talk. She says she understands that legally the house is mine. She says it like the word legally is an insult. But she feels that, emotionally, it's theirs too, because of all the time and money they've put into it. And then she hits me with it. She thinks I should gift them partial ownership of the house. I'm standing there trying to process if I actually heard that right. I'm like, are you serious? You want me to give you part of my house? She nods, dead serious. She's going on about how it would be a gesture of goodwill and would show that I appreciate everything they've done for me over the years. I tell her flat out, Mom, that's not happening. This house is mine. You're renting. End of story. But she's ready for this, like she's rehearsed her response or something. She says, fine, then we're done paying rent. We'll just stay here for free until you figure something out. I just stare at her, half shocked, half furious. I mean, what's there to even say? I'm looking at my dad, hoping he'll step in, but he's just sitting there, not saying a word. Typical. So I tell her, if you stop paying rent, you'll be breaking the lease and I'll have to evict you. And she smirks. Yes, actually smirks and says, you'd really do that to your own parents? You'd put us out on the street? It's this classic guilt trip, and in the past it might have worked. But now I'm done with all of it. I tell her, yes, if you refuse to pay rent, I'll evict you. I'm done being manipulated. She's furious. She says I'm selfish, that I only think about money, that I'm turning my back on family, the whole 9 yards. But I've heard it all before, and I know it's just her way of trying to get under my skin, to make me feel guilty enough to give in. But this time, I don't feel guilty. I just feel tired. At this point, my dad finally speaks up. He says, maybe we should just pay the rent, honey. It's only $3 more. And that's when my mom really loses it. She turns on him, shouting about how he never supports her and how he's too weak to stand up for their rights. It's like watching a train wreck, and I'm just standing there, part of me feeling bad for my dad, but the other part realizing that he's let this go on for way too long. So I tell them both, you have until the end of the month to make a decision. Pay the rent or move out. Those are the only options. My mom glares at me, and my dad just looks defeated. But I don't back down. I'm done letting them control the situation. I leave without saying another word, knowing I've probably just set off a whole new level of drama, but also knowing I can't keep playing this game. I head home, half expecting another angry call or text, but there's nothing. Another few days of silence. Then, out of nowhere, I get a text from my mom. She says, fine, we'll pay your precious rent, but don't expect us to do anything extra around the house anymore. I roll my eyes. The extra things she's talking about are basic yard work and cleaning, stuff any tenant would handle. But if this is her way of giving in while still feeling like she's won, then fine, I'll take it. So they grudgingly agree to pay the extra $3, and I think maybe finally this nightmare is over. But deep down, I know my mom isn't letting this go. She's got a grudge now, and it's probably just a matter of time before she tries something else. But for now, they're paying, and I have a little bit of peace. The funniest part? After all this, she sends me this long, guilt-trippy text about how family is all that really matters, and how I should be grateful for everything they've done for me. She's still trying to guilt-trip me, even when she's the one who practically forced me to threaten eviction. It's like she's living in some alternate reality where she's the victim, and I'm the villain for trying to enforce a simple lease agreement. I don't respond. I just let it go. I know if I say anything, it'll just drag things out longer, and I'm exhausted. I'm over it. I've said my piece, I've set my boundaries, And for once, I actually stuck to them. So yeah, they're still in the house, and I'm still the bad guy in her eyes. But at least now I know where I stand. And honestly, I feel like I've finally taken back some control over my own life. I'm done with the guilt, the manipulation, all of it. They can keep playing their games if they want, but I'm out. I've got my own life to live, and for once, I'm putting my own peace first. And if they ever bring up the house ownership thing again, well, let's just say I've got a notarized lease and I'm not afraid to use it. Story 4. My brother slept with my fiancée while I was about to propose. 22 years later, my daughter wants reconciliation because they are still family. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. So, I-48 males built something from nothing. Started as a construction worker straight out of high school, worked my ass off for decades, and now I own 3 successful contracting companies across the state. I'm worth about $4.2 million, own a beautiful house in the hills, drive whatever I want, and live exactly how I choose. But it wasn't always like this. 28 years ago, I was just a broke 20-year-old kid who thought loyalty meant something. 28 years ago, I still remember the smell of concrete dust and sweat that covered my work clothes when I left the construction site that Friday. My hands were calloused and raw from mixing cement all week, pulling double shifts just to save up every penny. But in my wallet, I had something that made me grin like an idiot. My final paycheck that would complete the $3,200 I needed for the engagement ring. Yeah, $3,200 was everything to me back then. I was planning to propose to Jessica the following weekend at her favorite restaurant downtown. I'm Marcus, and back then I was just a stupid kid who believed in fairy tales. I worked construction, lived in a shitty apartment with my older brother Derek, and was head over heels for my college girlfriend Jessica. She was studying business administration while I was breaking my back building other people's dreams. Derek and I were tight. He was the smart one, working toward his MBA, always had girls throwing themselves at him. Real smooth talker. Me? I was the worker, the one who fixed things with his hands. When I told him about my proposal plans, he slapped my back and said, "Bro, you're gonna make that girl the happiest woman alive." I believed every fucking word. Jessica and I had been together for 4 years. Blonde hair down to her shoulders, blue eyes that could make you forget your own name, and a smile that convinced me I was the luckiest bastard alive. She was the one, or so I thought. We'd talk about our future, the house we'd buy, the kids we'd have, how I'd work my way up to owning my own company while she climbed the corporate ladder. That Friday, my foreman let me leave early as a reward for the overtime I'd been putting in. I stopped by the flower shop and bought 24 red roses. Cost me $60, which was grocery money for the week, but I didn't care. I had a key to her apartment. Her roommate Sarah was usually out on Friday nights, so I figured I'd surprise her with dinner and flowers. The apartment was quiet when I walked in. I could hear music coming from her bedroom, some slow, romantic bullshit she always played. The door was cracked open, and what I saw when I looked in didn't just break my heart, it fucking destroyed my soul. Jessica was strapped naked on her bed, and my brother Derek was on top of her, going at it like animals. They were so into it they didn't even notice me standing there for a good 10 seconds. The roses fell from my hands and hit the floor, petals scattering everywhere. They jumped apart like they'd been electrocuted. "Marcus! Baby, it's not what it looks like!" Jessica screamed, grabbing a sheet to cover herself. Derek stood up, not even bothering to cover his dick, and had the nerve to say, "Bro, let us explain. This isn't what you think." "How long?" I managed to ask, my voice sounding like it came from someone else. They looked at each other, that guilty glance that told me everything. 6 months, Derek finally admitted, still not looking me in the eye. "But we didn't want to hurt you, man. It just happened." 6 months, half a fucking year while I was working myself to death, saving every penny for a ring, planning our future. 6 months while this piece of shit listened to me talk about how much I loved her, how I was going to propose, what kind of life we'd build together. I lost it. Completely fucking lost it. I screamed until my throat was raw, threw her lamp against the wall, told them both I'd rather die than ever see their faces again. "You knew I was buying you a ring," I yelled at her. "You fucking knew everything." I stormed out of there shaking with rage and betrayal. Drove around for hours until I had to pull over because I couldn't see through the tears. The next few weeks were hell. I moved out of the apartment I shared with Derek, got my own place across town, changed my number, My parents tried to play peacemaker. Brothers fight, you'll work it out, my mom said. My dad just shrugged and said, time heals everything. But when Derek and Jessica got engaged 3 months later, and my family acted like it was perfectly normal, that's when I realized I was truly alone. They got married 8 months later. Big ceremony, my whole family attended. I wasn't invited, obviously, but my mom made sure to tell me all about it. Derek looked so handsome, and Jessica was a beautiful bride. They're really happy, Marcus. Maybe it's time to move on. That's when I made a promise to myself. I'd show them all what a mistake they made. I threw myself into work like a man possessed. Started taking every job I could find, learning every trade, plumbing, electrical, roofing, you name it. While Derek was getting his fancy MBA, I was building real skills. I met Amanda at a coffee shop near a job site. She was a nurse, kind and patient. Nothing like Jessica's flashy gold-digging ass. We got married 2 years later. Had my daughter Emma 9 months after that. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Even when Amanda and I divorced amicably when Emma was 12, we just grew apart, no drama. We kept things civil for our kid. But here's the thing. While I was building my life, I was also building my empire. Started my first contracting company when I was 25, then a second one, then a third. By the time I was 40, I was pulling in serious money. Not just comfortable. I'm talking about the kind of wealth that changes everything. Meanwhile, Derek, his MBA got him a middle management job at some insurance company. Jessica worked part-time at a boutique, spending more than she made on designer bullshit. They had 2 kids, lived in a basic suburban house, drove used cars. Nothing wrong with that life, but it wasn't the success story they thought they were writing. I never spoke to any of them again. At family gatherings, I'd stay on the opposite side of the room. When someone mentioned them, I'd change the subject. My family learned that Derek and Jessica were my red line. Cross it, and I was gone. Emma grew up knowing she had an uncle, an aunt she'd never met. I never badmouthed them to her. I just said we had differences and left it at that. She was smart enough not to push it. And honestly, she had everything she needed. Private school, college fund fully paid, nice car on her 16th birthday, family vacations to Europe. She never wanted for anything. Then, 3 months ago, Emma dropped the bomb that would change everything. We were having our usual Sunday brunch at the country club when she said, "Dad, I want them at my wedding." I nearly choked on my coffee. What are you talking about? Uncle Derek and Aunt Jessica. I want them at my wedding next year. Emma was engaged to Ryan, a software engineer who made good money and treated her right. I was paying for the whole wedding. We're talking about an $85,000 event at the best venue in the city. Absolutely not, I said. Dad, it's been 28 years. Don't you think it's time to get over whatever happened? Get over it? Like it was some minor disagreement about a football game? You don't understand what they did to me. So explain it to me. I've been following Jessica on Instagram for years. She seems really nice, and their kids look sweet. Why can't we all just be a family? That's when I realized my mother had been showing Emma pictures behind my back, filling her head with ideas about this perfect family reunion. If you invite them, I won't be there, I said firmly. Are you serious? You'd miss your only daughter's wedding over some old grudge? It's not a grudge, Emma. It's called having self-respect. She stood up, threw her napkin down. Fine, then I'll pay for my own wedding. I don't need your money or your approval. And she stormed out, leaving me sitting there wondering if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. 2 weeks later, I came home from a job site to find cars in my driveway I didn't recognize. I walked into my house and there they were, sitting in my living room like they owned the place. Emma, Derek, and Jessica. Derek had aged badly. His hairline had retreated to the back of his skull. He'd put on at least 60 pounds. And his cheap suit looked like he'd bought it at a discount store. Jessica was a different story. She'd clearly had work done. Fake tits, Botox, the works. Dressed in designer clothes I knew damn well they couldn't afford. Still trying to look like the hot young thing she was 28 years ago, but coming off more like a desperate housewife. What the fuck is this? I asked. Dad, please, Emma said. Just hear them out. Derek stood up, trying to look confident, but I could see his hands shaking. Marcus, I know we have a lot to talk about. No, we don't. Get out of my house. Jessica stood up too, and that's when her true colors really showed. Oh, come on, Marcus, we're family. Can't we just put the past behind us? Her voice had this fake sweetness to it that made my skin crawl. She was eyeing my house, the expensive furniture, the artwork, the obvious signs of wealth, like she was calculating what it was all worth. You see, Marcus, she continued, Derek and I have been going through a rough patch financially. The kids need braces, we have some credit card debt, and we heard about how well you've done for yourself. There it was. The real reason for this visit. Are you fucking kidding me? I said. Emma told us about the wedding. Derek jumped in. Maybe we could help with the planning, and if you needed any financial assistance or advice. Financial assistance? From you two? I started laughing. Do you have any idea what I'm worth? Jessica's eyes lit up like dollar signs. Well, we know you've done well, and family should help family, right? I mean, Emma is getting married, and weddings are so expensive. Get out! My voice was deadly calm. Get out of my house right now. Emma started crying. Dad, they're trying to apologize. Apologize? They haven't said one word about what they did. They're here because they think I'm their lottery ticket. Jessica's mask slipped for just a second, and I saw the real her. Greedy, calculating, entitled. Look, Marcus, what happened between us was a long time ago. We were young, we made mistakes, but Derek and I are married now. We have kids, and we could really use some help getting back on our feet. Help getting back on your feet? What the hell have you two been doing for 28 years? Derek looked embarrassed, but Jessica just kept going. Well, Derek's job doesn't pay as much as we thought it would, and raising kids is expensive, and we made some bad investments. So you thought you'd come to the brother you fucked over and ask for a handout? It's not a handout, Jessica snapped, her fake sweetness disappearing completely. You're family, and honestly, you've done well enough that helping us wouldn't even dent your bank account. That's when I realized what kind of person Jessica really was, and always had been. A gold-digging, entitled princess who saw everyone around her as potential ATMs. Emma, I said, not taking my eyes off these two parasites. If you want them at your wedding, you can pay for it yourself, and you can find yourself a new father figure, because I'm done. I walked out of my own living room and went to my home office, locking the door behind me. I listened to them argue for another 20 minutes before they finally left. Emma didn't speak to me for 6 weeks after that. I'll be honest, those 6 weeks were brutal. I missed my daughter like crazy, and part of me wondered if I was being too stubborn. Maybe I should just swallow my pride, let them come to the wedding, and move on with my life. Then I got a phone call that changed everything. Marcus, this is Tony Rodriguez. I used to work with your dad. Tony was an old family friend who'd always been straight with me. I know this isn't my business, he continued, but I think you should know something about Derek and Jessica. My grip tightened on the phone. What about them? I was at Murphy's bar last week and I overheard them talking to your cousin Mike. They were planning something. Planning what? They're broke, Marcus. Really broke. Derek lost his job 6 months ago. They're about to lose their house. And Jessica's been making some big purchases on credit cards, thinking Derek would get a promotion that never came. My blood started to boil. But here's the kicker, Tony continued. They're not trying to reconcile with you out of any genuine remorse. Jessica actually said, and I quote, "Once Marcus forgives us publicly at the wedding, we can start asking him for real money. He's worth millions, and we're family. He'll have to help us." The phone creaked in my grip. She said they figured if they could get Emma on their side first, you'd have no choice but to give in. And once you did, they'd milk you for everything they could get. I hung up the phone and sat in my office for a long time, thinking. Then I started making some calls. You see, when you have money and you've built a network over 25 years, you can find out pretty much anything about anyone. I hired a private investigator. Cost me $5,000, but it was worth every penny. The report I got back was beautiful. Derek hadn't just lost his job. He'd been fired for sexual harassment. 3 different complaints from female coworkers. The company settled quietly to avoid publicity, but he was blacklisted in the insurance industry. Jessica had run up $47,000 in credit card debt, buying designer clothes and jewelry, trying to maintain an image they couldn't afford. They were 4 months behind on their mortgage. Their cars were about to be repossessed, and they owed the IRS $23,000 in back taxes. But the best part? Jessica had been cheating on Derek for 2 years with her personal trainer, a 26-year-old musclehead named Chad, who drove a motorcycle and lived in his mom's basement. The PI had photos, hotel receipts, everything. That's when I decided it was time for my revenge. I called Emma and told her I'd changed my mind, that I was ready to reconcile with Derek and Jessica, and they could come to the wedding. Really, Dad? You mean it? I've been thinking about what you said. Maybe it is time to let go of the past. She was so happy she cried. We met for lunch the next day and started planning the wedding again. I told her I'd cover all the costs, just like before. There's just one thing, I said. I want to do this right. I want to have Derek and Jessica over for dinner before the wedding. Clear the air, Maybe we can all start fresh. Emma thought that was a wonderful idea. I called Derek personally, put on my best reconciliation voice. Derek, this is Marcus. Look, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and Emma's right. It's time we put the past behind us. He was so shocked he could barely speak. Marcus, I. Wow. Really? Really? I'd like to have you and Jessica over for dinner this Saturday. Just the four of us adults, no kids. We can talk things through, maybe start over. That sounds amazing, man. Jessica's going to be thrilled. I bet she was. That week, I had my house deep cleaned and hired a catering company to prepare an expensive dinner. Prime rib, lobster tail, the works. I also had my security system upgraded with new cameras that covered every angle of my house, with crystal clear audio recording. Saturday night came, and they arrived right on time. Derek was wearing what looked like his only decent suit, and Jessica had poured herself into a tight dress that probably cost more than their monthly mortgage payment. Marcus! Jessica gushed, giving me a hug that lasted way too long. Your house is absolutely gorgeous. You've done so well for yourself. Derek was looking around like a kid in a candy store. Jesus, bro. This place must be worth a fortune. It's home, I said modestly. Come on, let's eat. We have a lot to catch up on. Dinner started off friendly enough. We talked about Emma's wedding, their kids, general small talk, but I could see Jessica getting more and more comfortable, and that's when her true nature started coming out. So Marcus, she said, cutting into her lobster, Emma told us you own 3 construction companies now. That must be incredibly profitable. I do all right. Oh, come on, she laughed, gesturing around the dining room. This is way more than all right. You must be worth, what, several million? Derek looked embarrassed, but didn't stop her. I don't really discuss my finances, I said. Of course, of course. I'm just saying, it's amazing how successful you've become. And here Derek and I are, still struggling to make ends meet. Here we go. The economy's been tough, Derek added weakly. It really has, Jessica agreed. Especially with Derek being out of work right now. You're unemployed? I asked, like I didn't already know. Just temporarily, Derek said quickly. I'm interviewing for some great positions. Jessica jumped in. The thing is, Marcus, we're in a bit of a tight spot financially. Nothing too serious, but you know how it is with kids and mortgages and everything. I'm sure things will turn around, I said. Oh, I know they will, Jessica said, reaching over to touch my arm. Especially now that we're all family again. I mean, family helps family, right? There it was. What exactly are you asking me, Jessica? She exchanged a look with Derek, then put on her biggest smile. Well, we were thinking, maybe you could help us out a little bit, just until Derek finds a new job. We'd pay you back, of course. How much are we talking about? Maybe 50,000? She said, like she was asking for spare change. I nearly choked on my wine. $50,000? I know it sounds like a lot, Derek said, but we're really desperate, Marcus. We might lose the house. And it's not like you don't have it, Jessica added, her mask slipping a little. I mean, look at this place. You probably spend 50,000 on your landscaping. I leaned back in my chair. So let me get this straight. You two betrayed me in the worst possible way 28 years ago, never apologized, and now you want me to give you $50,000? We are apologizing, Jessica said. We're here, aren't we? We're trying to make things right. By asking for money? By trying to rebuild our relationship, Derek said. The money is just temporary help between brothers. Jessica leaned forward, her cleavage practically spilling out of her dress. Marcus, honey, we all made mistakes when we were young. But look at us now. We're all mature adults. Can't we put the past behind us and focus on the future? You're right, I said, standing up. Let's focus on the future. I have something to show you both. I walked over to my entertainment center and pulled out a manila envelope. What's that? Derek asked. The future, I said, sitting back down. See, when you two came to me asking for help, I thought I should know exactly who I'd be helping. I opened the envelope and pulled out the private investigator's report. Jessica went pale. Derek looked confused. Did you know, I said conversationally, that Derek here was fired for sexual harassment? 3 different women, Derek. 3. That was a misunderstanding, Derek stammered. And Jessica, I continued, did you know your wife has run up $47,000 in credit card debt? Or that she's been fucking her personal trainer for 2 years? The silence was deafening. Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Derek looked like he was going to vomit. Oh, and here's my favorite part, I said, pulling out a photograph. This is Jessica and Chad at the Marriott downtown last Tuesday. Nice position, by the way. Very athletic. Derek grabbed the photo and stared at it. His face went from pale to red to purple. You fucking whore, he whispered. Derek, I can explain, Jessica started. Explain what? How you've been cheating on me while we're going broke? While I've been begging my brother for money? I think you two need to leave, I said calmly. But Jessica wasn't done. Her fake sweetness was completely gone now, replaced by pure entitled rage. You bastard, she screamed at me. You set us up. You knew about Chad and you humiliated me. I humiliated you? You humiliated yourself. We needed that money. We're going to lose everything. Not my problem. She stood up, her face twisted with fury. You think you're so much better than us? You think your shit doesn't stink because you have money? I think I'm better than you because I have integrity. Integrity? She laughed bitterly. You're just a bitter old man who can't let go of the past. You've been planning this revenge for 28 years. Actually, I've been planning it for about 2 weeks, but it's been very satisfying. Derek was still staring at the photo, broken and defeated. But Jessica was just getting started. You know what? Fine. We don't need your money. We don't need you. But don't think this is over. Oh, but it is, I said. Because you're never getting near me or my daughter again. That's when she really lost it. Your daughter? Your precious little Princess Emma? Do you want to know what she really thinks of you? She told me you're a cold, controlling asshole who uses money to manipulate people. I smiled. Did she? That must have been before she found out what kind of people you really are. Jessica looked confused. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Emma's voice came through crystal clear. Dad, I owe you an apology. Tony Rodriguez called me and told me what he heard at Murphy's bar. I can't believe I fell for their act. They're not trying to reconcile. They just want money. I'm so sorry I put you through this. Jessica's face went white. That was from 3 days ago, I said. Emma knows everything. The debt, the cheating, the harassment charges, all of it. You're lying. I played another recording. This one was Emma's voice talking to someone else. No, Jessica, you're not invited to my wedding anymore. I know what you really wanted from my dad, and I'm disgusted. Don't ever contact me again. Derek finally looked up from the photo. Emma knows about Chad? Emma knows about everything. So does the rest of the family, by the way. I sent copies of the PI report to everyone. Your kids will probably hear about it at school on Monday. Jessica screamed. Actually screamed like a banshee. You fucking monster! You've ruined our lives! No, I said, standing up. You ruined your own lives. I just documented it. Now get out of my house before I call the police. Derek stood up slowly, still holding the photo. He looked at Jessica with pure hatred. 28 years. 28 years I've been married to a lying, cheating whore. Derek, please. Shut up. Just shut the fuck up. He turned to me. Marcus, I'm sorry. For everything. For what we did to you. For coming here tonight. For all of it. It's too late for sorry, Derek. He nodded. I know. Come on, Jessica. Let's go. But Jessica wasn't done. She grabbed a wine glass and threw it at me, missing by inches. It shattered against the wall behind me. I hope you're happy, she screamed. I hope you die alone and miserable. I'll die rich and respected, I said. Can you say the same? Security cameras caught everything. I had the whole beautiful meltdown recorded in high definition. They left that night, and I never expected to see them again. But life had more surprises in store. Derek filed for divorce the next week. Apparently, the private investigator's report made it very easy for his lawyer to prove adultery and financial irresponsibility. Derek got custody of the kids, and Jessica got nothing. She had to move back in with her parents at 46 years old. Their house went into foreclosure. Derek had to declare bankruptcy. The IRS started garnishing whatever wages he could find from odd jobs. But the best part? Jessica's personal trainer, Chad, dumped her as soon as the scandal broke. Apparently, he wasn't interested in dating a broke, middle-aged woman with no prospects. Emma's wedding was beautiful. The guest list was smaller without Derek's side of the family, but it was filled with people who actually cared about us. I walked my daughter down the aisle with pride, and she thanked me in her speech for always protecting our family from people who would take advantage of our love. For 6 months, I didn't hear anything from Derek or Jessica. I assumed they'd slunk away to rebuild their lives somewhere else. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday morning when my secretary buzzed me at the office. Mr. Marcus, there's a Derek Thompson here to see you. He says he's your brother? I hadn't heard that name in my office ever. Derek had never even seen my businesses. Send him in. Derek walked into my office looking like a broken man. His clothes were wrinkled and cheap, he'd lost weight, and he had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in weeks. Marcus, he said, barely above a whisper, thank you for seeing me. What do you want, Derek? He sat down across from my desk and put his head in his hands. I'm desperate, man. Completely desperate. I figured as much. You wouldn't be here otherwise. It's not for me, he said quickly. It's for my kids, Tyler and Madison. They're 16 and 14, and they're living with me in a one-bedroom apartment above a pizza shop. Tyler's supposed to start his senior year next month, but we can't afford the school supplies. Madison needs a dress for homecoming, and I can't even buy her a $5 sandwich for lunch. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. I know what I did to you. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But those kids, they're innocent in all this. They didn't ask for their parents to be fuck-ups. I leaned back in my chair. Where's Jessica in all this? Gone. Moved to Florida with some guy she met online. Sends a Christmas card if the kids are lucky. She doesn't pay child support, doesn't call, nothing. And you think I should help you because you're a good man, Marcus. Better than me? Better than I ever was. He was crying now. I destroyed my own life, and I can live with that. But my kids are suffering because of my mistakes, and I can't fix it alone. What exactly are you asking for? Just enough to get the kids through school. Maybe help with rent so we can get a two-bedroom place. I'm not asking for handouts. I'll work. I'll do anything. Construction, cleaning, whatever. I'll pay you back every penny. I studied his face. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement was gone. This was a broken man begging for his children. How much? Maybe 2,000 a month, just until I can get back on my feet? 2,000 a month for how long? Until Tyler graduates and gets a job? Maybe 2 years? I did the math. $48,000 total. And what makes you think you won't fuck me over again? Derek met my eyes for the first time since he'd sat down. Because I've already lost everything that mattered to me. My wife, my house, my career, my reputation. The only thing I have left is my kids, and if you help me keep them safe and fed, I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful. I let him sit there in silence for a full minute. I'll think about it, I finally said. Marcus, I said I'll think about it. I'll give you an answer in 1 week. He nodded and stood up. Thank you, just thank you for considering it. After he left, I sat in my office for a long time. Part of me wanted to tell him to go fuck himself, but another part of me kept thinking about those kids, living in a one-bedroom apartment above a pizza shop because their parents were idiots. 3 days later, Jessica showed up. My secretary buzzed me again. Mr. Marcus, there's a Jessica Thompson here. She's very insistent. Jesus Christ. Send her in. Jessica walked into my office and I barely recognized her. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a t-shirt from Walmart. Her hair was fried from too much bleach, and she'd gained at least 30 pounds. The expensive cosmetic work had started to sag, making her look older than her 46 years. Hello, Marcus, she said, trying to sound confident but failing. Jessica, what brings you to my office? She sat down without being invited. I heard Derek came to see you. Did he? I know what he asked for. Help with the kids. And? She leaned forward, and I could see her trying to turn on whatever charm she thought she still had. Marcus, I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but those kids are my children too. The kids you abandoned. I didn't abandon them. I just needed space to figure out my life. In Florida. With your new boyfriend. Her face flushed. That didn't work out. Shocking. Look, Marcus, Derek can't take care of those kids alone. He's working at a fucking Home Depot now, making $12 an hour. They need their mother. They needed their mother when you were cheating on their father and running up credit card debt. That's in the past, she said, her voice getting shrill. I'm here now, and I want to be part of the solution. What exactly are you proposing? She took a deep breath, and I could see her shifting into full manipulation mode. I think the kids should come live with me in Florida. I have a nice apartment, good schools nearby. Derek can visit whenever he wants. And how would you support them? Well, she bit her lip. I was hoping you might help with that. Just temporarily, of course. There it was. Help how? Maybe 5,000 a month, just until I get back on my feet. I'm looking for work, but the job market is tough. 5,000 a month, more than double what Derek had asked for. And what about Derek? Derek? She waved her hand dismissively. Derek's a loser, Marcus. He always was. He can barely take care of himself, let alone 2 teenagers. Those kids need a mother who can provide for them properly. A mother who abandoned them. I made mistakes, she snapped. We all make mistakes. But I'm here now, and I'm trying to make things right. By taking the kids away from their father and asking me for $5,000 a month. It's not taking them away, it's giving them opportunities. And $5,000 is nothing to you, Marcus. You probably spend that much on wine in a month. And there was the real Jessica. Still entitled. Still greedy. Still thinking everyone owed her something. Let me ask you something, Jessica. Have you talked to Tyler and Madison about this plan? Well, no, but because I have. I had lunch with them last week. Her face went pale. You what? I wanted to meet my nephew and niece. See what kind of kids they were. You want to know what they told me about you? She didn't answer. Tyler said, Uncle Marcus, I never want to see that woman again. She destroyed our family and then left us. Madison said, she's not my mom anymore. A real mom doesn't abandon her children. Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Those kids hate you, Jessica. And honestly, I don't blame them. Jessica's face crumpled. That's not fair. I'm their mother. No, you're the woman who gave birth to them. There's a difference. She started crying then. Big, ugly sobs that smeared what little makeup she was wearing. Marcus, please, I have nothing. My boyfriend kicked me out. I'm living in a motel. I can't find work. I need help. You need help? What about when Derek needed help keeping his marriage together? What about when I needed help 28 years ago, when my brother and girlfriend betrayed me? I was young and stupid. You were 20 then. You're 46 now. What's your excuse for abandoning your children? She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. I made a mistake, okay? I thought I could start over, be happy. But it didn't work out. So now you want to come back and play mommy when it's convenient? I want to make things right. I stood up and walked around my desk, looking down at her. You want to make things right? Here's how you make things right. You disappear. You sign over full custody to Derek. You don't ask for a penny from anyone, and you let those kids heal from the damage you've done. I can't do that. Then you get nothing from me. She looked up at me with pure desperation. Marcus, please. I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Anything? Yes, anything. I walked back to my desk and pulled out a piece of paper. Sign this. What is it? A legal document renouncing all parental rights to Tyler and Madison. Sign it, and I'll give you $10,000 to disappear forever. She stared at the paper. 10,000? That's it? That's more than you deserve. But Derek's getting 2,000 a month? Derek is taking care of his children. You abandoned yours. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if I don't sign it? Then you get nothing. And I make sure every employer in whatever city you land in knows exactly what kind of person you are. Her hands were shaking as she picked up the pen. This isn't fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would be you rotting in hell for what you've done to your family. She signed the paper. I wrote her a check for $10,000. This is the last money you'll ever see from me or anyone in this family. If you ever contact Derek or those kids again, I'll have you arrested for harassment. She took the check and stood up. You know what, Marcus? You're right. I am a shitty mother and a shitty person. But you're not much better. You've let hate consume your whole life. Maybe, but I sleep well at night. Do you? Because I think you're just as miserable as the rest of us. She walked toward the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, I really did love you once. Back when we were kids. No, you didn't. You loved what you thought I could give you. Just like with Derek. Just like with Chad. Just like with every man you've ever been with. She left without another word. A week later, I called Derek and told him to come to my office. He walked in looking nervous, probably expecting me to tell him no. I've made my decision about helping you, I said. He held his breath. I'm not going to give you $2,000 a month. His face fell. I'm going to give you $3,000 a month. Plus I'm paying for both kids' college tuition when the time comes. Derek stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. There are conditions, I continued. You work for me. I'm putting you in charge of maintenance for all three of my companies. It's honest work, it pays well, and it comes with health insurance for you and the kids. Marcus, I don't know what to say. Say you'll take it seriously. Say you'll be the father those kids deserve. I will. I swear to God. I will. And Derek? Jessica signed over her parental rights. She's out of their lives for good. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Thank you, Jesus Marcus. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're going to earn every penny of this. I'm a tough boss. I don't care. I'll do whatever you need. 6 months later, Derek had proven himself. He was punctual, hardworking, and grateful. Tyler and Madison were thriving. Good grades, new clothes, a decent apartment. Tyler even got a part-time job at one of my job sites and turned out to have a natural talent for construction. At Emma's first wedding anniversary party, Derek approached me during a quiet moment. Marcus, I need to tell you something. What's that? I never really apologized. Not properly. For what Jessica and I did to you 28 years ago. I looked at him. You're right. You never did. I was a coward and a piece of shit. I betrayed my own brother for a woman who turned out to be a snake. There's no excuse for it. And I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than I've ever been about anything in my life. Why now? Because working for you, seeing how you've built your life, seeing how you've helped my kids even after everything, I finally understand what kind of man you are. And I finally understand what kind of man I should have been. I nodded. Apology accepted. Really? Derek, I spent 28 years hating you. It was exhausting. I'd rather spend whatever time I have left building something better. He stuck out his hand. Brothers? I looked at his hand for a long moment, then shook it. Brothers. Story 5. My wife called me her practice husband in front of her friends. So I showed her what practice divorce looks like. What's up, Reddit? So this happened last month and I'm still processing the whole thing. Figured I'd share it here because honestly, I need to get this off my chest and maybe some of you guys have been through similar shit. I've, 32 male, been married to Haley, 29 female, for 3 years now, and up until last month I thought things were pretty solid between us. Sure, we had our issues like every couple, but nothing major. At least that's what I thought. Quick background. Haley used to work in marketing at some mid-sized company downtown. Made decent money, had her own thing going. But about a year after we got married, she started talking about how stressful her job was and how she wanted to focus on other opportunities. I make pretty good money, so I told her if she wanted to quit and figure out what she really wanted to do, go for it. Seemed like the supportive husband thing to do, right? Wrong, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So last Friday night, Haley decides she wants to have her girlfriends over for dinner. This isn't unusual. She does this maybe once a month. Usually it's Bella, Jessica, and sometimes this other girl whose name I can never remember. They get together, eat way too much food, and talk about whatever it is women talk about when guys aren't around. I actually don't mind these dinners. Haley seems happy when her friends come over, and I like cooking anyway. Plus, it gives me an excuse to make my famous pasta sauce. And by famous, I mean I dump a jar of Rouse into a pan and add extra garlic and some red pepper flakes. But it tastes good, and everyone always compliments it, so whatever. The girls showed up around 6:30. I spent about an hour in the kitchen getting everything ready. The whole time I can hear them in the dining room getting louder and more animated. When I brought everything out, they were deep in conversation about some drama with one of Bella's other friends. Something about this girl dating her friend's ex or whatever. I wasn't really paying attention because honestly, that kind of high school bullshit doesn't interest me. I set everything down, asked if they needed anything else, and went back to the kitchen to clean up and give them space. Haley always says her friends appreciate that I'm not hovering around trying to be part of their conversations. So I'm in the kitchen loading the dishwasher and wiping down counters when I realize they've moved on to talking about relationships. Nothing unusual there either. That's like 80% of what they discuss. But then I hear my name mentioned, and I kinda tune in without really meaning to. That's when I heard it. Clear as day, Haley saying, "Honestly, girls, Anthony's just my practice husband until I find someone better." I literally stopped moving, like completely froze with a dirty plate in my hand. For a second, I thought maybe I misheard or took something out of context. But then her friend asked, "What do you mean a practice husband?" Then she started explaining to her friends that I'm good for now because I pay all her bills and do the cooking, but she's not going to stay with me forever. Says I'm fine for practice but not husband material long term. The problem is she can't really leave me yet because I pay for literally everything. All three of them start cracking up like it's the funniest thing ever. Meanwhile, I'm standing there in my own kitchen holding dirty dishes, wondering if I actually heard what I think I heard. The worst part wasn't even what she said. It was how casually she said it. Like it was just obvious, accepted fact that everyone already knew. She wasn't confessing some secret or asking for advice. She was just stating the situation like she might comment on the weather. I set the plate down real careful and just stood there for probably 2 full minutes trying to process what I'd just heard. My wife of 3 years. The woman I've been supporting financially for the past 2 years. The person I cook dinner for every night and whose friends I've been entertaining in my own house. She just told those friends that I'm practice. Practice. Like I'm some kind of training wheels she's using until she's ready for the real thing. I thought about walking in there and confronting her right then. Thought about asking her to explain exactly what the hell she meant by practice husband. But something stopped me. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the realization that if I made a scene, her friends would never tell me what they really thought about anything ever again. But honestly, I wasn't really thinking. I was just sitting there feeling like an idiot. How long had she been thinking this way? How long had her friends known? Was I the only person who thought our marriage was real? After they left, I waited about an hour. Figured I'd give her time to clean up and get settled before I brought it up. Didn't want to seem like I'd been sitting upstairs plotting or anything. Though honestly, that's exactly what I was doing. When I finally went downstairs, she was loading the last few glasses into the dishwasher. Looked relaxed and happy like she always does after hanging with her friends. I asked her straight up what that comment about me being practice was all about. She acted like she didn't know what I was talking about at first. just gave me this blank look like I was speaking a foreign language. So I spelled it out for her. Told her I heard what she said about me being her practice husband and how she can't leave because I pay for everything. That's when her whole demeanor changed. The confused act dropped and she got this look on her face like I was being ridiculous for bringing it up. Oh, that. Yeah, I said that. Do you have a problem? Just like that. No sorry, no explanation. Just asking if I have a problem like I'm being unreasonable for not wanting to be called practice. I looked at her for maybe 10 seconds. Really looked at her. She was standing there looking annoyed that I had the nerve to question her calling me practice. I told her no, no problem at all. And that's when I started planning. So that weekend was probably the longest 48 hours of my life. Haley was acting completely normal, like nothing had happened. Making breakfast Saturday morning, asking if I wanted to go furniture shopping, talking about maybe planning a vacation this summer. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there drinking coffee and thinking about how she basically admitted to using me as a financial safety net. We went to her parents' house for dinner, like we do most Sundays. Sat around their dining room table while her mom asked about work, and her dad told the same stories he tells every week. Haley's playing the perfect daughter and loving wife the whole time, holding my hand under the table, laughing at my jokes, acting like we're this amazing couple. The whole time I'm thinking about what her parents would say if they knew their daughter was planning to trade up from me when someone better came along. Would they still be so friendly? Would her mom still ask me about my work projects and tell me how proud she is of what I've accomplished? Monday morning, I called out sick. Told my foreman I was coming down with something and needed a day to rest. First time I'd used a sick day in probably 2 years, but I had more important things to deal with. I drove straight to my lawyer's office downtown. Yeah, I have a lawyer. When you own property and have decent assets, you get one. Learned that lesson from my dad who got cleaned out in his divorce back when I was in college. I explained the situation without going into too much detail. Told him my wife had made some comments that suggested she was planning to leave me eventually, and I wanted to know where I stood legally. He pulled out my file and started going through the paperwork from when Haley and I got married. Turns out that prenup I insisted on was the smartest thing I ever did. Haley wasn't happy about it at the time. Kept saying it showed I didn't trust her and how romantic couples don't need legal protection from each other. But I'd watched my dad lose half his retirement and the house he'd worked 20 years to pay off. Wasn't making that mistake. The prenup was pretty straightforward. Anything I owned before the marriage stays mine. Anything I earned during the marriage stays mine, unless she can prove she contributed to it financially. Since she quit her job and hasn't worked in 2 years, that would be pretty hard to do. The house is mine, the savings accounts are mine, even the car she drives is registered in my name only. My lawyer explained that technically, since my name is primary on all our accounts, I could move money around as long as I wasn't doing anything that would look vindictive in court. The key was to be smart about it, not emotional. We spent about an hour going through everything. Bank accounts, credit cards, insurance policies, even stupid stuff like streaming service subscriptions. Amazing how much financial stuff gets tangled up when you're married. Most people don't realize how complicated it is to separate two lives that have been combined for years. The crazy part was realizing how much control I actually had. Every credit card was in my name with her as an authorized user. Every utility bill, every subscription, every automatic payment, all tied to accounts that I controlled. She'd been living off my money for so long that she didn't have any independent financial foundation anymore. That afternoon, I started making changes. Nothing dramatic that would tip her off, just small adjustments that would give me more control when the time came. I moved money from our joint checking account to my personal savings. Not all of it, just enough to matter. Changed passwords on a few accounts, updated contact information, so notifications would come to my email instead of hers. The rest of the week I kept acting normal while quietly preparing. Haley didn't notice anything different because she never paid attention to our finances anyway. She just used her cards and assumed money would always be there. Never asked about balances or budgets or where the money was actually coming from. The next day, I had my lawyer draw up divorce papers. Took about an hour to go through all the details and make sure everything was worded correctly. Thursday, I signed everything. Felt weird putting my signature on papers that would end my marriage, but also felt like I was finally taking control of my life instead of just letting things happen to me. 2 days later, I put the final pieces in place. Made sure all the important accounts were secured and all the legal paperwork was ready to go. Everything had to be timed perfectly for maximum impact while staying completely within legal bounds. See, Haley has this routine every Saturday. She meets Bella and the rest of her friends for brunch at this expensive place downtown. It's become like a weekly tradition for them. They sit around for hours eating overpriced eggs and taking pictures of their food, then usually go shopping afterward. This Saturday was going to be different. Saturday morning started like every other Saturday for the past year. She came downstairs around 10:30, looking like she was ready for a magazine photo shoot. She grabbed her keys off the counter and gave me this quick kiss goodbye. I told her to have fun and watched her drive away in the car that I pay for, wearing clothes that I bought, carrying credit cards that I'm responsible for the last time. As soon as her car disappeared around the corner, I made the call to cancel her remaining credit cards. Took about 15 minutes to go through all the account verification stuff and get everything shut down. Next, I called the bank and had them freeze the joint checking account. Told them I suspected unauthorized access and needed to protect the funds while we investigated. Again, technically true. Her access was definitely unauthorized as far as I was concerned. The whole process took maybe 30 minutes. 30 minutes to cut off the financial pipeline that had been supporting her lifestyle for the past 2 years. I spent the rest of the morning setting up boxes in the living room and organizing all the divorce paperwork. Made a neat little pile of everything she'd need to know about finding her own place, getting her own insurance, figuring out her own finances. You know, all the adult stuff she'd been avoiding while I handled everything. Around 1:30, my phone started buzzing. First text from Haley asking me to call the bank because her card got declined. I ignored it. 1:45, another text saying her card wasn't working and she was embarrassed in front of the girls. Still ignored it. By 2:15, she was sending messages in all caps demanding that I answer my phone. The desperation was already starting to show, and she'd only been dealing with this for maybe an hour. Then she started calling. Let it go straight to voicemail. She called 6 more times in the next 20 minutes. Each voicemail got progressively more frantic and angry. The funniest part was when I got a text from Bella saying my wife was losing it at brunch because her cards weren't working. She actually used the laughing emoji. Same girl who'd been cracking up about me being practice was now watching Haley's world fall apart in real time. I texted back asking if everything was okay. Played it like I had no idea what was happening. Bella said Haley was claiming there was some problem with the bank and she couldn't pay for anything. Really? Banking problems? How weird. Then Haley's phone calls stopped. I figured she'd either borrowed money from one of her friends or decided to come home and confront me directly. Based on how well I know her, I was betting on option 2. I was right. Half an hour later, I heard her car pull into the driveway way earlier than expected. I could hear her car door slam from inside the house. Not the normal gentle close she usually did. This was the angry slam of someone who just had a very bad afternoon. The front door opened about 10 seconds later, and she came storming in, looking like she was ready to burn the house down. She was yelling before she even saw me, going off about how her cards got declined in front of everyone, and how Bella had to pay for her lunch, and how embarrassing the whole thing was. How she'd had to make excuses to her friends about why she couldn't go shopping. How the bank must have made some kind of mistake, and why didn't I answer my phone when she needed help. I was sitting on the couch with the divorce papers in my lap, and boxes stacked up next to me. Just sitting there calm as could be while she went off about her terrible afternoon. When she finally stopped yelling long enough to take a breath, I told her real calm that yeah, I canceled the cards because she doesn't need them anymore. That's when she really lost it. Started demanding to know why I would do that. What was wrong with me? How could I embarrass her like that in front of her friends? Like somehow I was the bad guy for not wanting to fund her lifestyle anymore. But then she noticed the papers and boxes. Her whole attitude shifted from angry to confused real quick. She asked what all this stuff was, and I handed her the divorce papers, explaining that this was her graduation from practice marriage. The look on her face when she realized what was happening was probably worth every penny I'd spent on her over the past 3 years. Pure shock followed by panic, followed by this desperate attempt to backtrack and pretend like none of this was her fault. She tried every approach she could think of. First, she claimed it was all a joke and I was overreacting. Then she got apologetic and promised she didn't mean anything by what she said. Then she got angry again and tried to make it my fault for not understanding her sense of humor. But the damage was done. I'd heard exactly what she thought about our marriage and about me. She'd showed me exactly how much respect she had for the life I'd been providing her. And now she was finding out what life looks like when that support gets pulled away. The whole time she's going through her emotional roller coaster, I'm just sitting there watching her realize that her comfortable little setup was falling apart. That the man she'd been calling practice had just practiced his way right out of her life. And the best part? Her friends got to watch the whole thing start. Got to see her cards get declined and watch her scramble to make excuses. The same friends who'd been laughing about her having a practice husband were now witnessing what happens when practice time ends. I gave her the same deadline I'd give any tenant who wasn't paying rent: 2 hours to pack up and get out. After that, her stuff would be on the curb, and she'd be dealing with this situation from somewhere else. That's when she tried to pull the legal card. Started insisting she couldn't just be kicked out because it was her house, too. She lived here, she had rights. I couldn't just throw her out on the street. I pulled out my phone and showed her the prenup she'd signed 3 years ago. Told her to read Section 4, Paragraph 2, the part that clearly stated the house remained my separate property regardless of how long we were married. Watching her read that prenup was probably the most satisfying moment of this whole thing. You could literally see her face change as she realized how screwed she was. She'd signed away any claim to the house, the cars, the savings accounts, pretty much everything. And she'd done it willingly because she thought she was just humoring my paranoia about protecting assets. She tried to argue that she didn't understand what she was signing back then, that I'd pressured her into it or misled her about what it meant. But we both knew that wasn't true. My lawyer had explained everything in detail. She'd had her own lawyer review it, and she'd signed it because she was so confident in her ability to keep me wrapped around her finger. When the legal reality hit her, she started crying. Real tears, not the fake ones she used when she wanted something. She said she didn't have anywhere to go, that all her friends lived with roommates or in tiny apartments. How was she supposed to find a place with no job and no savings? I told her she should have thought about that before calling me practice. The clock was ticking. What happened next was actually pretty impressive from a logistics standpoint. Once she realized I wasn't backing down, she went into full crisis mode. Started calling friends to see who could help her move or let her crash for a few days. Went upstairs and started throwing clothes into suitcases like her life depended on it. The funny part was listening to her phone calls. She couldn't exactly tell people the real reason she was getting divorced, so she had to make up some story about us having irreconcilable differences. A few of her friends offered to help, but you could tell they were confused about why this was happening so suddenly. Then she came downstairs with 2 suitcases and a bunch of random boxes, looking around the house like she was seeing it for the first time. This place she'd been living in for 3 years, treating like her personal hotel, was never going to be hers. She tried one last desperate attempt to change my mind. Stood there in the living room with all her stuff packed, telling me how this was crazy and we were throwing away 3 years of marriage over something stupid, she said. How people make mistakes, but they work through them together. I told her it wasn't stupid, it was honest. She'd finally told the truth about how she saw me and our marriage. I was just acting on that information. The thing that really got to her was how calm I was through the whole thing. She kept expecting me to get angry or emotional or give her an opening to turn this into a big fight where she could play the victim. But I just stayed matter of fact about everything. This was business now, not personal. Then her ride showed up. Bella driving some fancy SUV. She looked uncomfortable as hell, probably wondering what she'd gotten herself into by agreeing to help. The same girl who'd been laughing about the practice husband comment a week ago was now witnessing the aftermath. Right before she got in the car, Haley tried one more time, asked me to please reconsider, to give her another chance to prove that she really did love me and want to make this work. I told her to take care of herself and close the door. Watched through the window as they loaded the last of her stuff and drove away. Bella's car disappearing around the same corner where this whole thing had started a week ago. For the first time in years, everything felt exactly like it should be. That night was probably the quietest my house had been in 3 years. No TV shows I didn't want to watch, no constant chatter about her friends' drama, no planning expensive dinners at restaurants where the food costs more than some people make in a day. Just me, my pizza, and the sound of absolutely nothing. Woke up Sunday morning feeling like I'd been carrying around a weight I didn't even realize was there, and now it was gone. Around noon, my phone started ringing. Haley's mom. I should have seen this coming, but honestly, I'd been so focused on the logistics of everything that I hadn't really thought about dealing with her family. I answered because I figured I might as well get this conversation over with. Her mom launched right into it without even saying hello. Started demanding to know what was wrong with me and why Haley was at their house crying her eyes out, claiming I'd kicked her out for no reason. The whole conversation was exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd only heard one side of the story. According to Haley's version, I'd apparently lost my mind over some innocent comment she made to her friends and decided to end our marriage out of nowhere. She'd conveniently left out the part about calling me practice and saying she couldn't leave because I pay for everything. I asked her mom if Haley had mentioned what she actually said about me being practice. Her mom brushed it off, saying I was being dramatic about some comment she made to her friends. Just girl talk, Nothing serious. So I spelled it out for her. Explained that it wasn't just some comment. Her daughter had told her friends that I'm her practice husband and she can't leave because I pay for everything. Said this in my own house while I was making dinner for all of them. Her mom went quiet for maybe 10 seconds, then came back with this argument about how that's just girl talk, and I can't destroy a marriage over girl talk. Like somehow the fact that women say these things to each other makes it okay. I told her, watch me. That set her off. Started going on about how I was being cruel and vindictive, how Haley made a mistake but she loves me, and we should be able to work through this. How marriages take effort and communication, and I was just giving up at the first sign of trouble. The thing that really annoyed me was how she kept talking about Haley making a mistake. Like accidentally calling your husband practice in front of your friends is the same as forgetting to pick up milk at the store. This wasn't a mistake. It was her honest opinion about our marriage that she'd never intended for me to hear. I explained that Haley loves my bank account, not me. There's a pretty big difference between the two. Her mom didn't like that answer. Started threatening that if I didn't take Haley back, they were going to make sure everyone knew what kind of man I really was. How I'd abandoned their daughter when she needed support. How I'd thrown away a good marriage over my own pride. That's when I'd heard enough. Told her good luck with that strategy and hung up. Then I blocked her number because I didn't need to hear any more lectures about what a terrible person I was for not wanting to be called practice. About an hour later, Haley's dad started calling. Same basic conversation, but with more yelling and less emotional manipulation. He was taking the aggressive approach, telling me I was a coward for kicking out his daughter instead of working through our problems like a man. I explained the situation to him too, but he wasn't interested in details. Just kept repeating that real men don't give up on their marriages, and I was being weak and selfish. Apparently, real men are supposed to be okay with being called practice as long as they're married. Blocked his number too. Then Haley's sister started texting. Long messages about how disappointed she was in me and how I was breaking up the family over something petty. How Haley was devastated and I was destroying her life because my ego couldn't handle one stupid comment. Blocked her too. By Sunday evening, I'd basically cut off contact with Haley's entire family. Not because I couldn't handle their criticism, but because none of them seemed to think there was anything wrong with what she'd said. They were all more upset about me leaving than they were about her treating our marriage like a temporary arrangement. Monday morning, my own parents called. My mom started off asking if I was doing okay because they'd heard about me and Haley separating. Word travels fast in families, especially when someone's telling their version of events to anyone who'll listen. I explained the whole situation from the beginning. My dad's response was exactly what I needed to hear. He said good for me, and admitted they'd never really liked how Haley treated me anyway. Said she always seemed like she thought she was better than everyone and acted like she was doing me a favor by being married to me. My mom agreed, saying they'd bitten their tongues for 3 years because I seemed happy, but they could tell that girl was using me. Said they'd seen it from day one, but didn't want to interfere in my marriage. Finally, some support from people who actually cared about me instead of just taking Haley's side automatically. My dad asked if I needed anything or wanted them to come stay with me for a few days, while I got used to being on my own again. I told them thanks, but I was actually doing fine. Better than fine, honestly. For the first time in years, I felt like I could just exist without having to worry about someone else's mood or agenda or expensive habits. The conversation with my parents made me realize something important. The people who really knew me and cared about me weren't surprised by any of this. They'd been watching Haley take advantage of me for years, but respected my choices enough not to say anything unless I asked. Meanwhile, Haley's family was acting like I was the villain for not wanting to be treated like a temporary placeholder. Like I should be grateful for the privilege of funding someone's lifestyle while they openly planned to trade up when something better came along. The difference in reactions told me everything I needed to know about whether I'd made the right decision. My family was relieved that I'd finally stood up for myself. Her family was mad that their meal ticket had dried up. The next day, I changed my relationship status on social media and updated my emergency contacts at work. Small things, but they felt significant. Like I was officially reclaiming my life instead of just sharing it with someone who didn't really want to be there. By the end of the week, the dust had mostly settled. Haley's family had stopped trying to contact me, probably because they realized I wasn't going to change my mind. My own family was checking in regularly, but giving me space to process everything on my own timeline. The house felt completely different. Not empty, just peaceful. Like I could finally relax without worrying about someone judging my choices or planning their exit strategy behind my back. I was starting to remember what it felt like to just be myself, instead of trying to be whatever version of myself someone else wanted me to be. Then I got a text from Bella. Hey Anthony, hope you're doing okay. Can we talk? I'm really confused about what happened with you and Haley. Give me all the tea. The audacity was unreal. This was the same girl who'd been losing it laughing when Haley called me practice at that dinner. She'd been there for the conversation that started all this. She knew exactly what happened. I deleted the message and blocked her number. 3 weeks went by without a single word from Haley. No texts, no calls, no random drive-bys or attempts to get my attention through mutual friends. For a while, I thought maybe she'd actually accepted that it was over and moved on with her life. I really should have known better. I was home Saturday afternoon working on refinishing this old coffee table I'd bought at an estate sale when my doorbell rang. I figured it was probably a package delivery, or maybe one of my neighbors asking to borrow something. Looked through the window, and there's Haley standing on my porch. But she wasn't alone. She had some guy with her. Tall, decent looking, wearing one of those expensive button-down shirts that probably cost more than my grocery budget for a month. Designer jeans, fancy watch, the whole corporate pretty boy package. They were holding hands like they wanted to make sure I noticed. I opened the door and Haley immediately launched into this introduction. Wanted me to meet Chandler, her new boyfriend. Said they'd been dating and she thought it was important that I meet him, since we were still finalizing the divorce. The guy looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. You could tell he was uncomfortable and probably had no idea why his new girlfriend was dragging him to her ex-husband's house. But Haley was putting on this whole performance, acting like she was so happy and moved on and everything was perfect in her new life. I looked at both of them for a second and asked if they'd only come here to tell me that. Simple question, but it cut right through whatever game she was trying to play. Chandler immediately looked at Haley like he was confused about what was actually happening. She started getting flustered, saying she wanted me to see that she was doing fine without me and had found someone who really appreciated her. I told them that was cool and asked if they needed anything else or if I could get back to my Saturday. Just completely matter of fact about the whole thing. That's when Chandler spoke up. Asked Haley what this was really about because she'd told him they were just stopping by to pick up something she'd forgotten. Turns out she'd lied to get him to come with her. Probably told him some story about needing moral support or protection or whatever. You could see the exact moment he realized what was actually happening. His whole demeanor changed from uncomfortable to pissed off. Started asking if she'd brought him here to make her ex-husband jealous and whether she was serious right now. Haley tried to backtrack, but the damage was done. This guy had figured out that he was being used as a prop in whatever drama she was trying to create. He dropped her hand, took a step back, and told her he wasn't doing this. Said she could find her own way home and walked back to his car. Just left her standing there on my doorstep looking stupid while he drove away. The whole thing took maybe 3 minutes from start to finish. Her big plan to make me jealous had backfired completely, and now she was stranded at my house with no ride and no backup plan. Are you happy now? She said. Like somehow this was my fault that her scheme had blown up in her face. Like I'd forced her to lie to some guy and drag him over here for this pathetic display. I didn't say anything. Just stood there waiting to see what she'd do next. That's when she did the most desperate thing I've ever seen. Looked me right in the eyes and said, "Okay, fine, I'm single now. Let's just get back together. We can start over and pretend none of this ever happened." I actually laughed out loud. Couldn't help it. Here's this woman who'd called me practice, put me through 3 years of being treated like a placeholder, brought another guy to my house to try and make me jealous, and now she wanted to get back together because her rebound had ditched her on my doorstep. The audacity was incredible. She really thought I'd been sitting around waiting for her to come back, that I'd just been killing time until she was ready to give our marriage another shot. Like I should be grateful that she was willing to settle for her practice husband again, now that her upgrade plan had failed. I was still laughing when I closed the door in her face. She started yelling through the door about how I was making a mistake, and how we belonged together, and all this desperate stuff. Kept pounding on the door and ringing the doorbell like a crazy person. I put on my headphones and went back to working on the coffee table. Eventually, she gave up and left. I watched through the window as she called someone for a ride, probably having to explain to whoever picked her up why she was stranded at her ex-husband's house with no way to get home. The whole thing was so pathetic it was almost sad. That was 2 months ago now. Haven't heard from her since, though I did hear through a mutual friend that she's living back with her parents and working at some retail job. Apparently, the whole influencer lifestyle doesn't work as well when you don't have someone else paying for it. Meanwhile, I got promoted again last month, and I'm thinking about getting a dog. Maybe take some cooking classes, learn to make something more impressive than jar sauce pasta. Travel somewhere I actually want to go instead of just wherever looks good on social media. It's funny how everything worked out. She said I was practice until she found someone better. Turns out I was practice too. Practice for being the kind of man who doesn't put up with being treated like a backup plan. She practiced being terrible at marriage, and I practiced ignoring red flags. Now we're both practicing being single, except I'm way better at it than she is. Guess practice really does make perfect after all. Story 6. This story is titled, My Wife Mocked Me, Tiny Performance from a Tiny Man, in front of her friends, but what I did next left her speechless. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. I, 38 male, never thought I'd be sharing this story, but after lurking on this sub for months, I figure maybe writing this all out might help me process everything that's happened. Been with my wife, 36 female, for almost 9 years. Married for 8 of them. Always thought we had a decent thing going. Not perfect, but whose marriage is, right? Some background on me. I've been working my way up in financial consulting for the last 15 years. Started at the bottom, no college degree, just hustled my ass off and learned everything I could. My old man always said, education comes in many forms. He was a blue-collar guy who worked with his hands his whole life, but was one of the smartest people I've ever known. He taught me that respect is earned through actions, not words. I built a solid reputation for being the guy who can handle difficult clients that nobody else wants to deal with. The problem solver. The fixer. Physically, I've always been in pretty good shape. I hit the gym 4 to 5 times a week, played rugby in college, and dabbled in amateur MMA in my 20s. Nothing professional, but I won more fights than I lost. I'm not huge or anything, but I've always been proud of staying fit. 6 feet 1 inch and around 190 pounds, mostly muscle. Never had issues with confidence or self-esteem, at least not until the last few years of my marriage. My wife works in pharmaceutical sales, one of those jobs where your appearance and ability to schmooze matters more than actual knowledge of the products. She's always talking about networking and making the right connections to climb the corporate ladder. The kind of person who judges restaurants by whether the right people might see her there. So anyway, one Friday she insisted we host this dinner party for her coworkers and their spouses. It's important for my career, she said, in that tone that meant there was no room for discussion. I'm not big on hosting parties. I'd rather be watching the game with a couple buddies, but I figured it was important to her, so why not? Spent all day busting my ass to make everything perfect. Cleaned the whole house top to bottom, cooked a 3-course meal. I've always enjoyed cooking, something my dad taught me. Made sure the wine was properly chilled, the works. Made this roast that takes like 6 hours to cook properly. Homemade appetizers. Even baked a damn cheesecake from scratch. Evening starts off fine. Everyone's having appetizers, making small talk, complimenting my cooking. These pharmaceutical types all dressed like they just stepped out of a catalog. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect bullshit small talk. I start thinking maybe this won't suck after all. I can play the good host for one night. Then my wife gets to her 3rd glass of wine. I know her patterns. Beer makes her sleepy, liquor makes her angry, but wine makes her mean. The conversation somehow gets to relationships, and she gets this look on her face. This smile I've learned means trouble is coming. It's like watching a car crash about to happen, but being unable to stop it. She turns to her colleagues and says, "You know what's funny?" Her voice was way louder than it needed to be. When we first met, I thought he would be this amazing catch. Tall, successful, impressive in all areas. And she emphasized all, like she was in some bad comedy routine. I'm immediately on edge. I know where this is heading. Her colleague's husband asks, "And he isn't?" Everyone laughs, thinking it's just married couple banter. Then she holds up her hand, pinching her thumb and index finger together, with barely any space between them, and says, "Some things don't measure up to expectations." The whole table erupts in laughter, while I'm sitting there with my face burning red. But she wasn't even done. Honestly, it's like being married to a teenage boy. Quick to start, quicker to finish, if you know what I mean. More laughter. Sometimes I wonder if I should buy him a booster seat for dinner. One of her female co-workers tried changing the subject, probably feeling how uncomfortable this was getting. But my wife kept going. "No, really, it's fine. We all have our crosses to bear. Mine's just smaller than most." Then she raised her glass in this mocking toast. I just sat there frozen, my food untouched, my hands gripping my napkin so hard my knuckles turned white. The conversation finally moved on, but the damage was done. I could see it in everyone's eyes, pity, embarrassment, that uncomfortable awareness you can't unsee. My manhood, my confidence, my dignity, all laid out as a joke at my own dinner table. The worst part? This wasn't even the first time she'd done something like this. It was just the first time she'd done it in front of people I'd have to face again. I remember thinking, I cooked all this food, cleaned this house, and this is how she treats me. But like always, I swallowed it down, smiled through it, because that's what men are supposed to do, right? Suck it up. Don't make a scene. But something broke in me that night. Something that wouldn't be fixed. What hurt the most wasn't just the humiliation. It was realizing that the person who was supposed to be my closest ally, my partner, thought so little of me that she'd use my most private insecurities as dinner entertainment. I somehow made it through the rest of dinner on autopilot, clearing plates, refilling drinks, forcing smiles, making sure everyone had coffee and dessert, playing the perfect host while dying inside. But behind my smile, something was breaking. Something fundamental was shifting in how I saw my marriage, my wife, and myself. After everyone left, she acted like nothing happened, kicked off her heels, flopped on the couch, and started scrolling through her phone. When I confronted her about it, she just dismissed my feelings completely. Oh, lighten up, it was just a joke. Everyone has these playful jabs at their partners. You're being too sensitive. She didn't even look up from her phone. Would you like it if I made jokes about your body in front of your colleagues? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. She rolled her eyes. God, you're so dramatic. It's different for men and women. Besides, they all know I love you. Then she got up and headed to the bedroom. I'm tired. Don't stay up too late cleaning. That night, as she slept soundly beside me, I laid awake staring at the ceiling. Her words played on repeat in my mind. This wasn't the first time she'd made comments like this, but it was the first time she'd done it so publicly, so deliberately. I thought about my dad and what he taught me growing up. He was old school, believed a man should provide, protect, and persevere. He'd worked the same job for 40 years without complaining once. Even when his hands got so arthritic, he could barely hold a pen. Son, he'd told me once, the measure of a man isn't in his wallet or his pants. It's in how he carries himself when life gets heavy. Dad died 2 years ago. Cancer. Fought it like a champ right to the end. Never complained, not even once. Just kept telling us not to worry, that he'd had a good life. That's the kind of man I wanted to be. The kind of husband I tried to be. I'd carried this marriage for years, taking her jabs, her criticism, her disrespect, all because I thought that's what a good husband does. My dad would never have complained about his marriage. He and Mom had been together 45 years when he died, but I'm pretty sure Mom never mocked his manhood in front of their friends either. But this dinner party was different. This was the catalyst that finally opened my eyes to the truth of our relationship. Sometimes humiliation can be the wake-up call you never knew you needed. As I laid there, I started to wonder, when had I become this person? This pushover who would smile and serve dessert after being emasculated in front of strangers. My dad taught me to be strong, to be respectful, but he never taught me to be a doormat. I realized something else too. My dad and Mom had disagreements, sure, but there was always respect there, always love. I couldn't remember the last time I felt respected by my wife, and if I was being honest with myself, I couldn't remember the last time I felt loved either. Morning came, and with it, a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't a partnership. This was something else, something toxic. And for the first time, I allowed myself to consider a word I'd never associated with my marriage before. Abuse. That dinner party wasn't a one-off thing. As I laid awake that night, memories came flooding back. A constant stream of small cuts that had slowly bled my self-worth dry over our years together. In the beginning, her comments were subtle, disguised as jokes or helpful suggestions. Maybe you should wear shoes with thicker soles, she'd say, before we went to events with her colleagues. It might help you look more authoritative. I'd laugh it off, thinking she was just being practical. You might want to let me order for both of us, she'd say at restaurants with her friends. You always choose the wrong wine. Then she'd pat my hand like I was a child. This despite the fact that I've always been in great shape. I used to compete in amateur MMA fights in my 20s. Nothing professional, but I held my own. She knew this. Hell, I have a small trophy case in our basement that she insisted we hide away when her parents first visited. It seems so aggressive, she'd said. I don't want them to think you're some kind of meathead. She'd always find ways to minimize my accomplishments while highlighting her own. When I closed a big account at work, she'd say, "That's nice," and change the subject. But if she got the smallest recognition at her job, we'd have to go out to celebrate, and she'd talk about it for weeks. Then came the bedroom comments. What started as guidance quickly turned into criticism. Is that it? She'd ask with visible disappointment. Already? Or worse, she'd sigh and turn away mumbling, Don't worry about it. I'm used to it by now. Each time I tried harder to please her, only to face more disappointment, more sighs, more subtle head shakes. I remember this one time I suggested trying something new in bed. Nothing crazy, just mixing things up a bit. She laughed and said, "That's cute, but you can barely handle the basics. Let's not get ahead of ourselves." After a while, I stopped initiating. Why set yourself up for failure, right? Then she started complaining that I never initiated anymore. Most husbands actually want to sleep with their wives, she'd say. It was like being trapped in a no-win situation. My promotion at work 3 years ago should have been a celebration. I'd finally made regional manager after years of grinding, a 40% pay increase, and a company car. Instead, when I proudly told her about it, she responded, "That's nice. I guess they must not have had many options this year," then immediately changed the subject to her own work accomplishments. I remember standing in our kitchen, bottle of Macallan 18 unopened, as she talked about herself for 40 minutes straight. I'd bought that bottle to celebrate with her. Ended up drinking it alone in the garage a month later while working on my project car, a '69 Camaro I'd been restoring for years. The garage became my sanctuary, the one place she rarely went because she didn't like the smell. In retrospect, it was probably the only part of my life she hadn't completely invaded and critiqued. Family gatherings were another battlefield. She'd introduce me to distant relatives with a hand on my shoulder, saying things like, "This is my husband. He's not what I expected when I dreamed about marriage as a little girl. But we make do, don't we, honey?" All while wearing that perfect smile that made everyone think she was just being playfully affectionate. When we'd shop for clothes, she'd hold up smaller sizes and say, "Maybe someday," right in front of store assistants. If I tried something on that I liked, she'd frown slightly and say, "It's fine if that's what you want, but it doesn't really do you any favors." Even my hobbies weren't safe. When I started taking boxing again, something I'd always enjoyed, she laughed and told her friends on the phone, "It's his midlife crisis, I think. He's trying to recapture his glory days, but mostly he just comes home sore and whiny." I stopped going after 3 months. The worst was when my dad got sick. Instead of supporting me through one of the hardest times of my life, she turned it into a chore. "Do we have to go visit him again? We just went last weekend." Or, "I don't see why you need to be there so much. The doctors are doing everything they can." The night after his funeral, she complained that I was bringing the mood down at home and suggested I try to move on. My father wasn't even in the ground yet, and she was telling me to get over it. Looking back now, I can see so clearly what I couldn't see then. This was a pattern of systematic emotional abuse. Death by 1,000 cuts, each one small enough to dismiss individually, but together they had nearly destroyed me. The most messed up pattern was how she'd build me up in private, just enough to tear me down in public. She'd say I looked handsome as we got ready for an event, only to later tell everyone how she had to help me coordinate my outfit because I dressed like a colorblind teenager. She'd praise a meal I cooked at home, then tell dinner guests I was still learning basic techniques. Our vacations followed the same script. She'd criticize my planning abilities, my navigation skills, my restaurant choices, all while documenting our perfect couple moments for social media. The contrast between her online portrayal of our marriage and the reality was crazy. The night after that dinner party, scrolling through her Instagram, I saw she'd posted photos from the evening. Amazing dinner with amazing friends and my amazing husband who made it all happen. The comments were filled with heart emojis and couple goals responses. That's when it truly hit me. I was living in two different marriages. The public one she crafted online, and the private one where I was constantly reminded I wasn't enough. As morning light came through our bedroom curtains, I realized with startling clarity, this wasn't love. This was abuse, and it had been happening for years. The realization that I was in an abusive marriage changed something fundamental inside me. For the first time, I started paying attention to the little things I'd been ignoring, like how protective she was with her phone, how she'd always turn it face down when I entered the room, how she'd step outside to take certain calls claiming they were work-related, even at 10 p.m. on weekends. I'd never been the jealous type. I trusted her completely, even when friends hinted I maybe shouldn't. "All those overnight conferences," my buddy Mike had said once, "just seems convenient." I'd shut him down immediately. "She's not like that," I'd insisted. "Her career is important to her." 2 days after the dinner party, she left her phone on the kitchen counter while taking a shower. It buzzed repeatedly with incoming messages. I'd never snooped before. Trust had always been important to me, even when I was the only one practicing it. But something made me look this time. The lock screen showed messages from someone saved as Gym-Regional Training. "Missing you already, baby. Last night was incredible. Still feel you on me? When can you get away again? Need more of that ass." My hands were shaking as I picked up her phone. By some bitter coincidence, she hadn't changed her password since we'd set up each other's phones years ago. I opened the message thread and felt the room spin around me. Hundreds of messages stretched back months. Explicit photos. Detailed accounts of hotel meetups. Plans for their next encounter. This Jim guy wasn't even her coworker like I'd first thought. He was some loser she met at a work conference. A part-time personal trainer who worked at her hotel's gym but mostly lived off his parents at 35. From their messages, I gathered he was living in their basement apartment and driving his dad's old car. They had inside jokes about me, about my job, about my performance in bed, about how clueless I was. The most recent messages discussed their plans for tomorrow night. Apparently, I would be working late, which was news to me. But what truly destroyed me were the messages where they discussed me. He has no idea, she'd written. Too busy trying to please me to notice anything. Jim had asked if she felt guilty for being with a real man for once. He should thank me for staying with him this long. At least Jim knows how to use what he's got, even if all he's got is a big D and not much else lol. I scrolled further back, finding messages from the night of the dinner party. He just sits there and takes it, she'd written. I practically called him tiny and inadequate in front of everyone, and he still served dessert with a smile. It's almost too easy. Jim responded, that's because he knows he can't do better than you. Bet he jerks off thinking about you fucking a real man. There were pictures, too, comparing us. Explicit details about how much bigger and better Jim was. How he could go all night while I couldn't last 5 minutes. How she'd come home from their meetups and lie next to me, still feeling him inside her. I felt sick. I felt rage. But mostly, I felt a strange, cold clarity that I hadn't felt in years. I kept reading, unable to stop myself. The messages went back 7 months, almost to the day. But there were references to others before Jim. Mentions of a David and someone called T who apparently had been fun while it lasted. My entire marriage flashed before my eyes. All those late nights at the office, the weekend conferences, the girls' trips. Had any of it been real? Had she ever been faithful? I heard the shower turn off upstairs. With mechanical precision, I took screenshots of key conversations, texted them to myself, then deleted the messages from her phone. I replaced the phone exactly where I'd found it, then walked to the kitchen sink and splashed cold water on my face. When she came downstairs, wrapped in her robe with her hair in a towel, I was calmly making coffee. Sleep well? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Like a baby, she replied, completely unaware that her world was about to come crashing down. I printed key documents and screenshots, securing them in a folder. Then I called my buddy Mike asking if I could stay at his place for a few days. Mike and I go way back to high school. He's the kind of friend who would help you bury a body and never ask questions. We played rugby together, got into our share of trouble as teenagers, and he was the best man at my wedding. Everything okay? He asked, immediately sensing something was wrong. Not really, I admitted. Can't talk about it right now, but I need a place to crash for a bit. Mi casa es su casa, brother, he said without hesitation. Want me to bring beer? Maybe tomorrow, I said. Tonight I need a clear head. Next, I contacted a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but Janet Klein, reputed to be the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. Her firm's tagline was literally, "We don't get even, we get everything." I can see you at 3 p.m., she said, after hearing the briefest outline of my situation. Bring any financial records you can gather, and those screenshots. I spent the next hour gathering what I could, without raising suspicion. Bank statements, investment account information, even took photos of her jewelry collection. Things I'd bought her over the years that were worth thousands. That evening, I acted completely normal. I asked about her day. I made dinner. I suggested watching her favorite show. All while the folder sat hidden in my briefcase by the door. All while she texted him right next to me on the couch, smiling at her phone screen. Good news at work? I asked casually. Just a project coming together, she replied without looking up. Nothing you'd understand. I nodded and sipped my bourbon, studying her face. This stranger I'd shared my life with for 9 years. The woman who had systematically destroyed my self-worth while betraying me in the most fundamental way possible. I love you, I said, testing the words. She glanced up briefly. Love you too, she responded automatically before returning to her phone. That moment of practiced, empty routine made everything crystal clear. I wasn't just being belittled and mocked. I was being actively deceived by someone who held no real love for me. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something unexpected rising within me. Not heartbreak, not even anger, but a cool, clarifying resolve. It was time to end the charade. I'm not gonna lie. Part of me wanted to confront her right then, to throw her phone against the wall and watch her face as I laid out every detail I knew. The old me, the fighter who never backed down from a challenge, was screaming to be let loose. But the strategist in me, the part that had helped me climb from entry level to regional manager, knew better. This wasn't a bar fight. This was psychological warfare, and I needed to be smart. So I waited, and I planned. The meeting with Janet went exactly as I'd hoped. She was cold, calculating, and completely on my side. This is an extremely strong case, she said, reviewing the evidence I'd gathered. The infidelity is well documented, and from what you've described, there's a clear pattern of emotional abuse. What do I do next? I asked. Don't confront her yet, Janet advised. We need to secure your assets first. Move half the money from your joint accounts to a new personal account. Document everything of value in the house. Forward me any additional evidence of the affairs. And most importantly, don't let her know you're planning to leave until we're ready. I followed her instructions to the letter. Over the next 2 days, I methodically prepared for the end of my marriage. I opened a new bank account at a different bank. I documented our assets. I even took the day off work to move essential belongings to Mike's place while she was at work. I also did one more thing. I found Jim's social media accounts and figured out who his parents were. A quick search revealed their address, the same basement apartment he was living in. I did some digging and found out his dad was actually a pastor at a local church. That information might come in handy later. Everything was in place for the confrontation I knew had to happen. That evening, I prepared her favorite dinner, salmon with roasted vegetables and white wine. She came home surprised by the romantic setup. What's the occasion? She asked, tossing her keys on the counter. Just felt like doing something nice, I replied, pouring her a glass of wine. How was your day? Busy, stressful, the usual. She checked her phone again, probably messaging Jim before sitting down. We ate in relative silence until I finally spoke. I need to talk to you about something important. She sighed dramatically. Can it wait? I'm exhausted. No, it can't. I placed the folder on the table between us. I know about the affair. Her expression cycled rapidly through shock, denial, and calculation before settling on indignation. What are you talking about? I opened the folder and laid out the evidence piece by piece. The hotel receipts, the text messages, screenshots, the restaurant bills, the phone records. You went through my phone? She snapped, attempting to flip the script. That's a complete invasion of privacy. Yes, I did, I admitted calmly. After years of your emotional abuse and public humiliation, I finally listened to my instincts. She laughed incredulously. Abuse? Are you serious right now? I've supported you through everything. You've belittled me at every opportunity, I countered. You've mocked my height, my performance in bed, my career, all while sleeping with some deadbeat who lives in his parents' basement. Her eyes widened. You don't know anything about Jim. I know enough. I know he's 35 and lives with mommy and daddy. I know his father's a pastor who would probably be fascinated to learn what his son has been up to. I know he's not even on your company payroll, despite you listing him as a work contact. Her strategy shifted instantly. Tears formed in her eyes. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. We can work through this. The affair is just one part of why this marriage is over, I explained, maintaining my composure. Even without it, I wouldn't stay with someone who treats me with such contempt. She reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back. You don't understand, she pleaded. I've been under so much pressure at work. He was just there. It was a moment of weakness. 7 months of moments, I corrected her. And the things you said about me? Her tears vanished, instantly replaced by cold fury. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, I've been unhappy. What did you expect? You never satisfied me. Not financially, not emotionally, not physically. I nodded, almost relieved to finally hear her honest thoughts. That's exactly why I'm leaving. I deserve better than someone who sees me that way. You, she scoffed. Better than me? Good luck finding anyone who will put up with your limitations. She gestured dismissively at my crotch. By limitations, do you mean my inability to detect bullshit? Because that's definitely improved recently. I smiled, feeling strangely calm. Or maybe you mean my limitation of believing my wife when she said she loved me? That one's cured too. Her face contorted with anger. You think this is funny? You think you can just walk away from me? I'm not walking away from you, I corrected her. I'm walking away from this. I gestured between us. This isn't a marriage. It's a performance. And I'm done playing my part. In that moment, looking at her beautiful face twisted with cruelty, I felt a strange sense of peace. This woman had never loved me. She'd only loved controlling me, diminishing me. I've already spoken to a lawyer, I said. The divorce papers will be ready tomorrow. I'll be staying elsewhere until it's finalized. Her expression changed again, panic breaking through the contempt. You can't be serious. Where will you go? What will people think? I don't care what people think anymore, I replied, standing up. That was always your concern, not mine. As I moved toward the door where I'd stashed my overnight bag earlier, she rushed after me, grabbing my arm. Wait! We need to talk about this. You can't just throw away 9 years. I removed her hand firmly. You threw them away. One comment, one lie, one betrayal at a time. You'll never make it without me, she hissed, her mask completely fallen now. You were nothing when I met you. I made you who you are. I laughed at that, genuinely amused. Is that what you tell yourself? That the regional manager with his own house and car was nothing? That the guy everyone at work respects was nothing? That's some impressive revisionist history. Where will you go? She demanded again. That's no longer your concern, I said simply. For the first time in our marriage, I saw something new in her eyes. Not love, not affection, but a stunned recognition that I was no longer under her control. You'll regret this, she whispered. You'll never find anyone like me. I smiled, genuinely. That's exactly what I'm counting on. I walked out of our house that night with just a duffel bag and my laptop. The cool evening air felt like freedom against my face. Mike was waiting in his truck at the end of the block. I'd arranged everything down to the minute. She followed me to the porch, her voice shifting between rage and desperation. You think this is some kind of movie moment? She shouted. You think you're teaching me a lesson? Get back inside. I kept walking, not looking back. Her voice changed again. Please, she called, softer now. I'm sorry, we can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want. For a second, my steps faltered, 9 years of habit nearly pulling me back into her orbit. She doesn't look happy, Mike observed as we drove away. She's not used to losing control, I replied. Later that night, after a few beers at Mike's place, he finally asked the question I knew was coming. What happened, man? I thought you guys were solid. I showed him some of the screenshots. His face darkened as he read them. Jesus Christ, he muttered. What a fucking psycho. I always thought there was something off about her, but this is next level. Yeah, I agreed, taking another swig of beer. The crazy thing is, I didn't even see it until now. It's like I've been underwater for years, and I just finally came up for air. Mike put his hand on my shoulder. You're gonna be okay, brother. You're staying here as long as you need, and when you're ready, we're gonna go out and celebrate your freedom. The next 3 days were a blur of practical matters. My lawyer expedited the divorce papers. I opened new accounts. I arranged for a moving company to collect my remaining possessions while she was at work. I found a small apartment and signed a 6-month lease. Throughout it all, my phone never stopped. Her messages came in waves, angry, then pleading, then threatening, then bargaining. You can't do this to me. 3:47 a.m. Please come home and talk about this. 4:12 a.m. If you go through with this, I'll make sure everyone knows what a failure you are in bed. 7:03 a.m. I didn't mean it, baby. I was just angry. I love you so much. Please call me. 11:30 a.m. I didn't respond to any of them. My lawyer had advised against it, and frankly, I had nothing left to say. She showed up at my office, creating a scene that only reinforced my decision. My assistant had to call security to escort her out. My boss called me into his office afterward. Is everything okay? He asked, concerned. That seemed intense. I took a deep breath and decided to be honest. I'm getting divorced. Found out my wife has been cheating on me, among other issues. To my surprise, he nodded sympathetically. Been there. My first wife had an affair with our neighbor. Worst time of my life, but trust me, it gets better. I hope so, I said. Take whatever time you need, he offered. And if you need someone to talk to who's been through it, my door's open. She sent her sister to talk sense into me, which backfired when her sister, after hearing the full story, quietly told me she understood my decision. She's always been like this, her sister confessed. She did the same thing to her college boyfriend, made him feel worthless until he believed it. Why didn't you ever say anything? I asked. Her sister looked down, ashamed. I tried once. She didn't speak to me for a year afterward. I guess I was a coward. I didn't stop there, though. Remember how I mentioned Jim's dad was a pastor? Well, I sent an anonymous package to his church with printouts of some of the more explicit messages between Jim and my wife. Nothing identifying her directly, but enough that his parents would know what their precious boy was up to, breaking up a marriage and living a lifestyle that directly contradicted their teachings. Was it petty? Maybe. But sometimes karma needs a little help. On the 4th day, I returned to the house with a police escort to collect some personal items. I didn't trust the movers with family photos, heirlooms from my parents, important documents. She was waiting, eyes red and puffy. You called the police on me? She hissed as I entered. I'm just here for my things, I said, moving past her to her bedroom. She followed me, watching silently as I collected what remained of my life before her. What about all the good times? She finally asked. You're just throwing everything away? I paused, considering my answer carefully. Number, you did that when you decided I wasn't enough. I never said. You didn't have to say it. You showed it every day in 1,000 tiny ways. For the first time, she seemed to have no response. She stood in the doorway, diminished somehow, as I carried my box toward the front door. As I reached the threshold, she made one last attempt. Your name is still on the mortgage, she said. You're still responsible for half. I nodded. The lawyer will sort that out. Sell the house if you need to. I can't afford it alone, she admitted, vulnerability breaking through her armor. That's not my problem anymore. Her face contorted with a flash of the old contempt. This is exactly why I needed someone else. You're too weak to even fight for our marriage. I looked at her, really looked at her, one last time. In that moment, I saw her clearly. Not the goddess I'd placed on a pedestal, not the cruel manipulator of recent days, but just a flawed, insecure person who had built herself up by tearing others down. I'm not fighting for something that hurts me, I said simply. That's not weakness. That's self-respect. I closed the door behind me, her first genuine sob breaking through as it clicked shut. The sound followed me down the walkway, raw, uncontrolled, and strangely satisfying. In the police officer's car, I exhaled fully for what felt like the first time in years. My phone buzzed again with her incoming call. I turned it off. All good? The officer asked. Getting there, I replied, watching our house shrink in the side mirrors as we drove away. The officer, an older guy with graying temples, nodded knowingly. Been on a lot of these domestic calls. Never gets easier. Domestic? I'm not. I started to protest. Not all abuse leaves bruises, son, he said quietly. Seen plenty of men in your position. Nobody talks about it much, but it happens. I hadn't really thought about it in those terms before. Me, a victim of domestic abuse. It didn't fit the image I had of myself. But then again, neither did cheated on husband or divorced guy at 38. Life has a way of giving you identities you never asked for. 6 months can change everything. The divorce was finalized faster than expected. She didn't contest it once she realized I wouldn't return. Janet, my lawyer, was ruthlessly efficient. We got a fair division of assets, and I didn't try to take her to the cleaners even though I probably could have. I just wanted out. The house sold quickly in a hot market, and after splitting the proceeds, I had enough to place a down payment on a sleek condo downtown, closer to my office. 2 bedrooms, industrial style with exposed brick and big windows. The complete opposite of the suburban McMansion we'd lived in. This place actually felt like me. I later heard through mutual friends that her pharmaceutical company downsized her division 2 months after our separation. Apparently, her boss had been protecting her mediocre performance because they were having an affair too. When his wife found out and threatened divorce, he ended things with her, and she was the first one cut in the layoffs. Edit. Lots of questions about whether I was weak for not confronting her earlier or not fighting harder for the relationship. Listen, guys. Staying in an abusive relationship isn't strength. Leaving one is. And fighting for a relationship only works when both people are fighting for the same thing. If you're with someone who constantly makes you feel inadequate, who betrays your trust, who mocks you in front of others, that's not love. That's possession. Know the difference. Edit 2. For the dudes asking how to know if you're in an abusive relationship, if you constantly walk on eggshells around your partner, if you can't remember the last time you felt respected by them, if they build themselves up by tearing you down, if they isolate you from friends and family, those are pretty big red flags. Check out Dr. John Gottman's work on contempt in relationships was eye-opening for me.